Good news, I reincarnated as an Uchiha. Bad news, I just saw Itachi Uchiha sharpening his kunai. In my past life, I was just an engineer on Earth, but I grew up loving the Uchiha Clan, and I hated how they were slaughtered. And in this life, I'm not about to let history repeat itself. The massacre is coming, and Fugaku Uchiha is walking us straight into it. Why didn't Fugaku do something for the Uchiha? Why didn't Itachi Uchiha stand with his own clan? Was his brother the only one who mattered? What about the newborns, the elderly? What was their crime? Why did they have to die? I'll rebuild the Uchiha. I'll make the Uchiha Clan the strongest power in the shinobi world, to the point where even a single Uchiha deployed to a war zone strikes fear into nations. The Hokage thinks he can discard us like trash. I'll do to the leaf exactly what they did to us. You've seen evil Uchiha before, but you've never seen a calculated one. If they don't want the Uchiha, then we'll become independent. The air on the battlefield was thick with the taste of copper and ash. Uchiha Akira pushed his burning legs forward, his breath tearing through his throat in ragged gasps. Beside him sprinted the last remaining member of his squad. Just the two of them left. They moved in desperate tandem, shadows cutting through the heavy curtain of smoke, eyes locked on the safety of the distant tree line. Then came the sound. It wasn't an explosion or a battle cry, just a sickening wet snick that sliced cleanly through the roar of the war zone. A sudden spray of terrible warmth hit the right side of Akira's face. His momentum carried him forward another 2 steps before something heavy and wet hit the dirt. Akira's boots dug into the scorched earth, kicking up a cloud of soot as he skidded to a violent halt. He looked down. A body. His teammate's body lay in the dirt at his feet. Her dark hair was matted with dust, and her lifeless eyes were fixed wide, staring up at the smoke-choked sky with an expression of mild, frozen surprise. Time ground to an agonizing halt. The sounds of distant explosions faded into a high-pitched ringing in Akira's ears. His lungs locked up, refusing to draw air. His hands began to tremble, his mind violently rejecting what his eyes were showing him. Then, a harsh, guttural sound broke through the ringing. Slowly, mechanically, Akira's gaze dragged upward. The thick dust ahead of them began to settle, revealing the looming silhouettes of 5 stone shinobi ninja standing in front of him. One of them casually flicked a blood-soaked blade to the side, shaking off the excess crimson. They weren't panting. They weren't rushing. They stood like a wall across his path, their faces twisted into ugly, amused smirks. They chuckled among themselves, looking down at Akira as though they had just stepped on a bothersome insect. Something hot and tight coiled inside Akira's chest, strangling his heart. A memory violently slammed into his mind, bright and mocking against the gray ash of the battlefield. Sunlight filtering through the leaves of a training ground. The smell of slightly burnt rice balls. His female teammate laughing at a joke. The third boy in their squad, who had died only 2 days ago, pushing round eyeglasses up his nose, smiling. They were a 3-man squad. They had been safe. They had been alive. The memory shattered, replaced instantly by the sight of her body in the dirt, gone. I couldn't save either of them. The grief didn't just hurt, it burned. A sudden violent surge of chakra erupted from deep within his core, rushing up his spine and pooling thick and scalding behind his eyes. The world flickered. When Akira's vision settled, everything had changed. The swirling dust seemed to hang suspended in the air. The high-pitched ringing in his ears vanished, replaced by the hyper-focused sound of the stone ninjas breathing. The Sharingan, a single blood-red tomo spinning in each eye, had awakened. The laughter ahead of him abruptly died. Fuck, one of the stone shinobi hissed, taking a sudden step back. And Uchiha, don't look at his eyes! The amusement vanished from their faces, replaced by cold, lethal professionalism. With practiced efficiency, they fanned out into a battle formation, moving as one. No hesitation, no mercy. Akira moved purely on instinct. His hands blurred to his pouches, drawing a fistful of shuriken and hurling them in a wide, desperate arc. The stone shinobi sneered, their kunai flashing as they batted the projectiles out of the air. Sparks rained down onto the dirt. But as the shuriken clattered to the ground at their feet, the leader's eyes widened. Tied intricately to the rings of the blades were thick, overlapping stacks of paper. Scatter! Leader shouted. Akira brought his hands into a single seal. Boom. Dozens of detonating tags ignited at the exact same moment. The blast was apocalyptic, a roaring, blinding sphere of fire and concussive force that tore the earth apart. The shockwave swallowed the formation, sending a wall of dirt and heat crashing over Akira, though he never blinked. When the thick black smoke finally began to clear, the terrain was entirely reshaped. 3 of the shinobi lay in the crater, their heavy armor melted and fused to their skin, their bodies writhing and screaming in agony. A 4th stumbled out of the smoke, his eardrums blown out, blood pouring down his face. The leader remained standing, panting heavily, his flak jacket scorched but intact. He stared at the crater in sheer disbelief. You little bastard. Just how rich are the Uchiha, giving a genin that many tags? Akira didn't answer. He was already moving. He lunged through the dissipating smoke, closing the distance in a heartbeat. Through the Sharingan, the world moved in agonizingly slow motion. He saw the wounded 4th man try to raise his kunai, tracking the shift of the man's shoulders before the arm even moved. Akira stepped perfectly inside the clumsy guard and drove his kunai up under the man's jaw, sinking it deep into the brainstem. Blood sprayed across Akira's face. He ripped the blade free, letting the corpse drop into the mud. How dare you? The leader roared. The stone shinobi lunged, his movements a sudden blur of speed and fury. He was a veteran of the front lines, and even with the Sharingan, he was terrifyingly fast. Akira's red eyes tracked the sudden tension in the man's shoulders. He raised his kunai just as the leader brought his own blade crashing down. Clang! Sparks showered between them. The sheer kinetic force of the veteran's strike shot down Akira's arm, buckling his knees and forcing him down into the dirt. Before Akira could recover, the leader viciously twisted his wrist, breaking the blade lock, and threw a devastating spinning kick at Akira's ribs. The Sharingan predicted the trajectory a split second before the leg moved. Akira threw himself backward, feeling the wind of the heavy boot graze his flak jacket. He landed on his feet, skidding backward, but the leader didn't give him a single breath to recover. The stone ninja closed the gap instantly, throwing a feint at Akira's face before slashing low at his legs. Akira parried desperately, but his muscles screamed in protest. He was reacting, but his body couldn't match the man's raw physical speed. The leader used the momentary opening, stepping inside Akira's guard and slamming a heavy knee straight into Akira's stomach. Akira gasped, spitting saliva as the air was violently driven from his lungs. He stumbled back, his guard dropping wide open. "Die, you little rat," the leader sneered. He stepped forward, thrusting his blade with terrifying precision, piercing it straight through Akira's chest, right where his heart should be. The leader smiled, tasting victory. Then, the resistance of flesh and bone vanished. The coughing, bleeding boy on his blade suddenly disappeared in a soft poof of white smoke. A shadow clone? Wide-eyed realization dawned on the leader's face. When did he cast that? During the explosion? He never finished the thought. The real Akira materialized from the heavy, lingering smoke in the man's blind spot. Moving with silent, desperate precision, Akira thrust his kunai forward, sinking it to the hilt between the leader's shoulder blades. The blade severed the spine and pierced cleanly through the heart. The man gagged, a wet, bloody cough spilling down his chin. The kunai dropped from his trembling fingers. He collapsed, dead before his knees even hit the earth. The sudden silence on the battlefield was deafening. Akira stood alone among the bodies. He stared at his blood-soaked hands, his chest heaving violently. Then, the adrenaline broke. The burning in his eyes flickered and died as his Sharingan deactivated. The world immediately spun, tilting dangerously on its axis. His legs turned to lead. Through the blurring haze of his vision, he saw a figure bursting through the smoke in the distance. A green jumpsuit, a bowl cut. Might Guy, his old classmate, sprinting toward him at full speed, screaming his name. Akira tried to take a step toward him, but his knees buckled. Before he even hit the ground, the darkness swallowed him whole. When Akira finally opened his eyes, the blinding white of a canvas ceiling greeted him, accompanied by the sharp, stinging scent of medical alcohol. He was lying on a stiff cot in a sprawling, dimly lit medical tent. All around him, the air was thick with the suffocating weight of suffering. Over 20 battered shinobi occupied the surrounding beds. Some were wrapped in blood-seeping bandages, groaning in feverish delirium. Others lay entirely still, trapped in exhaustion-induced comas. A dull ache throbbed behind Akira's eyes. He reached up, pressing his fingertips against his eyelids. The memory flashed, the body, the explosion of chakra in his core. I finally opened it, the one-tomo Sharingan. He lowered his hands, watching his fingers tremble uncontrollably against the stark white bedsheets. So the Uchiha truly are cursed, he whispered to the empty air, his voice hoarse. Did I really have to watch my comrades fall before me? All for the sake of awakening these cursed eyes? Actually, I'm from Earth. I remember Naruto clearly. I know the Uchiha clan will be eradicated in a few years. Yet no matter how hard I train, these eyes refuse to awaken. And to make it worse, why the hell I don't even have a golden finger, he muttered. No system, no overpowered cheat, just a cursed bloodline that required psychological torture to upgrade. The timeline was ticking. In just a few short years, Itachi's blade would fall. The entire Uchiha clan would be wiped from existence. Clan leader Fugaku was passively steering them all off a cliff, and Danzo was waiting in the shadows, salivating over their eyes. I don't want to die, Akira thought, his trembling hands slowly closing into tight fists. I swear, I'll kill Danzo with my own hands before I let him take my eyes. But the crushing weight of reality pressed down on him. How could he change destiny? He couldn't just walk up to Fugaku and tell him the future. The man wouldn't listen to a grieving, low-ranking genin. Worse, Fugaku might suspect him of treason or madness. There was only one absolute truth in this clan. Uchiha respected strength. If he wanted to steer the clan away from the massacre, he couldn't just be an advocate. He had to usurp Fugaku. He needed the unwavering support of the clan, and he needed to become the clan leader himself. And for that, he needed power, far more than he had now. Weeks bled into months. Akira was transported back to Konoha, and soon after, the grinding gears of the Third Great Ninja War finally came to a halt. But the peace felt like a slap in the face. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, had signed a 10-year peace agreement with the other villages. The terms shocked the Akira. Konoha demanded absolutely zero compensation from other villages. Anyone with half a brain knew the truth. It was a cowardly treaty. It was only borrowed time. Akira watched the village celebrate, feeling nothing but cynical disgust. In 10 years, a new generation would be raised. Academy classrooms would fill again. Children would graduate into shinobi. The economy would recover just enough to fuel another conflict. And when that day came, war would return, as it always did. And through it all, the Hokage would sit comfortably behind his desk, playing the benevolent peacemaker. Totally stupid, Akira thought. If Hiruzen had forced the Stone Village to pay heavy war reparations, they would have been economically crippled for the next half-decade. Other villages would have thought twice before provoking the leaf. Konoha could have entered a golden age of prosperity. Instead, the Hokage had effectively pardoned the enemy, shifting the financial burden onto his own people. Now, every major clan, included Uchiha, are bleeding their own private coffers dry to rebuild Konoha's destroyed infrastructure. The village had survived the war, but the true battle for survival had only just begun. But for Akira, this financial crisis presented a twisted kind of opportunity. Because the Hokage had forfeited war reparations, the village's treasury was drained. Compensation for the dead would be delayed by at least a year. Akira watched the village closely. How were the grieving families supposed to survive? Widows, orphans, and crippled shinobi were being told to wait while the village rebuilt its walls. Hiruzen Sarutobi is a cancer to Konoha, Akira thought coldly. Akira didn't care if the rest of Konoha burned under the Hokage's incompetence, but the Uchiha were a different story. Their primary income came from the Konoha military police force, a budget the village elders had just slashed by 60% to fund the reconstruction. The clan was bleeding money, working for bare minimum wages. I won't let my clan perish, Akira vowed. There was only one way to ensure their survival and eventual separation from Konoha: total financial independence. You couldn't stage a coup or fund a breakaway clan if you relied on your enemy's payroll. He needed a product, something that sold like hotcakes in both peace and wartime, something every shinobi in the world needed, yet warehouses could never keep in stock. Detonating tags. In this world, explosive tags were incredibly expensive. The process was painfully archaic. The paper was costly, the intricate sealing formula had to be drawn by hand with specialized ink, and finally, a shinobi had to manually infuse their chakra into the design. The entire process took nearly an hour per tag. Even a skilled sealing artisan could produce, at most, 10 to 15 a day. When Akira first learned this, he had actually laughed out loud in his room. Don't these people know what a printing press is? He immediately got to work. During the first month of peacetime, he stayed locked in his basement. Using his memories from Earth, he built a primitive prototype, a manual impact print block press. It required him to press the ink down himself, but it printed 20 flawless sealing formulas an hour. The tags were perfect, but they were empty. Without a chakra signature woven into the ink, they were just useless pieces of paper. So he visited a civilian hardware shop and bought a standard chakra infuser, a basic tool normally used to power lights. He took it apart, rewired the chakra-conducting metals, and integrated it directly into the printing press's stamping mechanism. By the end of the second month, he had upgraded the system into a continuous, hand-cranked machine that automatically infused his chakra as it stamped, 100 tags an hour. But Akira didn't stop there. Over the next 3 months, he perfected the technology. He built a newspaper-style rotary printing press in his basement. He lined the walls with sound-dampening seals to muffle the mechanical clacking. Connected to an upgraded automated chakra battery, the machine could churn out thousands of fully armed detonating tags a day. He now possessed a monopoly on the most vital war resource in the world. But Akira was cautious. If he suddenly flooded the Konoha market with tens of thousands of tags, prices would plummet, the market would crash, and Anbu, or worse, Danzo's root, would immediately trace the source back to him. He needed to be a ghost. First, he hired a commoner to open a small, unassuming ninja tool shop in Konoha's business district. Through this front, he sold a modest 30 to 40 tags a day. It was completely normal. No one batted an eye. But in the shadows, his true operation began. Using the transformation jutsu to change his face and chakra signature, Akira ventured into the black markets outside the village. He sought out underworld merchants and foreign smugglers who were desperate to restock their depleted armories after the war. He didn't sell them millions at a time. That would draw too much attention. Instead, he sold them in discreet, untraceable crates of 10,000. He priced them aggressively at 800 ryo apiece, 200 below Konoha's market rate, and absurdly cheap compared to other villages, where the same item would sell for at least 1,200 ryo. The smugglers bought them instantly, handing over briefcases stuffed with cash. Every time a deal closed, Akira walked away with millions of ryo in untraceable funds. Deep in his basement, the rotary press kept spinning, printing money as fast as it printed explosives. Without anyone ever knowing, the foundation for the Uchiha clan's true independence had officially begun. Over the next few months, Akira's underground tag operation generated a terrifying amount of wealth. He had more money flooding in daily than he could possibly spend. But wealth without an explanation was a death sentence. He needed to launder the money, and he needed to do it in a way that built his influence. So Akira began diversifying. He opened a string of legitimate businesses across the village. The crown jewel was a high-end yakiniku restaurant in the commercial district, heavily marketed around its novelty. The grills were lit and maintained by Uchiha fire-style techniques, ensuring the perfect sear. Alongside the restaurants, he established a private security and escort firm for civilian merchants. To staff these ventures, he specifically hired marginalized, struggling Uchiha members. It gave them an income, kept them close, and ensured no one questioned where a young Uchiha was getting his funds. But even as his pockets lined with gold, the atmosphere in Konoha was growing toxic. Through his civilian fronts, Akira picked up on the whispers in the village. The rumors were already starting. Civilians and other shinobi clans were looking at the Uchiha with growing resentment and suspicion. The invisible hand of Danzo was clearly at work, slowly alienating the clan from the rest of the village. Time was running out. Akira needed to take over the clan, and soon. If only I had the Mangekyo Sharingan, Akira thought bitterly. I could just subjugate them all by force. But he didn't. He sat at his desk, drafting a list of every influential elder and vulnerable family within the clan. He divided them into factions. First were the Doves, the moderates who wanted peace with the village at any cost. Akira could fund their community initiatives and convince them that his leadership would bring the economic stability required for true peace. Then came the Hawks, militant hardliners who spoke of honor and strength, but answered to resources. Akira didn't need to break them. He only had to fund them. Loyalty always followed the money. But his greatest weapon was clan leader Fugaku's own incompetence. Fugaku had not raised the salaries of the Konoha military police force in 5 years. Inflation from the war had skyrocketed, and the village had slashed their budget. The men patrolling the streets were exhausted, overworked, and on an incredibly tight budget. Over the next year, Akira orchestrated his masterpiece. Using his connections, he managed to secure a transfer into the administrative branch of the military police. It was a boring desk job that most Uchiha despised, but for Akira, it was a goldmine. He suddenly had access to the financial and personal records of every single family in the clan. He knew whose wives were sick. He knew who had too many children to feed. He knew who was drowning in gambling debts. Like a shadow, Akira approached them one by one. He offered them a lifeline. He spoke in hushed, sympathetic tones, planting seeds of doubt. Fugaku's hands are tied by the Hokage, he would tell them with a sad smile. He is too distant. He doesn't care about the daily struggles of his men, but I do. He offered them massive, interest-free loans to save their families. There was only one condition, written quietly into the bottom of the agreement. Repay the money within 1 year, or pledge your unconditional political support to Akira Uchiha when called upon. Desperate and grateful, they signed, without hesitation. By the time the year came to a close, exactly as Akira had calculated, only 5% of the borrowers had managed to scrape together enough to repay him. The remaining 95% defaulted. But Akira didn't send debt collectors or break their legs. He simply smiled, forgave the financial debt, and cashed in their loyalty. They were fiercely grateful to him. They viewed him as a savior who had helped them in their darkest hour. But as Akira sat in his office reviewing the numbers, he frowned. It's not enough. Even with the struggling lower class firmly in his pocket, he estimated he only controlled about 30% of the clan's voting power. Not all Uchiha were poor. The elite elites and the stubborn middle class remained fiercely independent. If he tried to impeach Fugaku now, he would fail. He needed a spark to win over the rest of the clan. At the Naka Shrine. It was late at night, and the secret clan assembly was in full swing. The air inside the underground cavern was thick, hot, and suffocating with tension. At the front of the room, Fugaku sat with his arms crossed, his face an unreadable stoic mask as the elders screamed at each other. "We are the police force," a hawk elder roared, slamming his fist onto the tatami mats. "The village treats us like stray dogs. The budget cuts are an insult. We must demand our rightful authority." "And do what? Start a civil war?" a dove elder shot back, his face purple with rage. "You will doom us all with your pride. We must endure and show the Hokage we are loyal." Akira stood near the back, his arms folded, watching the chaos unfold. He didn't look at the screaming elders. He looked at the crowd. The vast majority of the clan, the neutral members, the patrolmen, the tired fathers, and the exhausted mothers were looking back and forth between the two screaming factions. They looked drained. They didn't want the bloody rebellion of the Hawks, but they couldn't stomach the humiliating submission of the Doves. They were trapped in a miserable stalemate, completely disillusioned with the current leadership. Akira's eyes narrowed in the dim light. 30% isn't enough, he thought, watching the frustrated faces of the majority. A heavy hand clapped down onto Akira's shoulder, pulling him from his thoughts. He glanced sideways to see Uchiha Iso, his closest friend and the man who helped manage his civilian storefronts. Iso leaned in, his voice barely a whisper over the shouting elders. "Hey, calm down. You look like you're about to murder someone." Akira didn't blink. He just offered Iso a thin, terrifying smile. "Yeah, I am." Iso's eyes went wide. "Wait, what?" Before Iso could press the issue, Fugaku abruptly stood up at the front of the shrine. The sheer weight of the clan leader's chakra washed over the room, instantly silencing the bickering elders. Fugaku swept his stern gaze across the crowd, desperate to change the explosive topic of rebellion. His eyes landed on Akira near the back. "Uchiha Akira," Fugaku's deep voice echoed off the stone walls. The entire clan turned to look at the young genin. "I have heard the rumors," Fugaku continued, his tone softening into something resembling approval. "I hear you have been using your personal business profits to financially support struggling members of the clan. I am very thankful for your kindness. As clan leader, I ask you, what reward do you seek for this loyalty?" Akira held Fugaku's gaze. He didn't bow, he didn't waver, he simply smiled. "This is my clan, Lord Fugaku," Akira said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent room. "I helped them because they are our family. I don't require a reward for keeping my own people from starving." A murmur of approval rippled through the weary crowd. Fugaku nodded, looking pleased. "A noble sentiment, which is why I must ask a favor of you. Today the Hokage summoned me. He has heard of your commercial success. The village reconstruction funds are running dry, and he has requested that you lend a portion of your wealth to Konoha to aid the village." The room went dead silent. The clan members looked at Akira, their eyes filled with sudden pity. To be directly asked for money by the Hokage wasn't a request, it was an extortion tactic disguised as a patriotic duty. If he refused, he would be branded a traitor to the village. Akira's smile vanished, his expression turned to ice. "Why?" Fugaku blinked, momentarily thrown off by the blunt refusal. "Why? To help the village, Akira. We are Leaf Shinobi." "I asked why I should help them," Akira interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous carrying register. Fugaku's Sharingan flared to life, his pride stinging. "Akira, watch your tone." Akira stepped forward, leaving a panicked Iso behind him. "They have enough money to pay Anbu to monitor the Uchiha compound 24 hours a day. They have enough money to fund Danzo's underground experiments. They have enough money to subsidize the Sarutobi clan's private businesses. But they don't have money to pay their own ministers?" A collective gasp sucked the air out of the shrine. Fugaku's face drained of color. "Akira, do you have any idea what you are saying?" Several veteran jonin stood up, their hands twitching toward their weapons, shocked by the sheer treason spilling from the boy's mouth. Akira ignored them, locking his eyes entirely on Fugaku. "Tell me, clan leader, how many years has it been since the village released the proper operational funds for our police force? When our men were forced to buy their own bandages and ration bars, why didn't you demand money from the Hokage then?" Akira turned his gaze to one of the Hawk elders. "Elder, tell me, what is the standard monthly salary of an Uchiha Jonin working the police force?" The elder hesitated, looking nervously at Fugaku before muttering, 20,000 ryo. 20,000, Akira repeated loudly, making sure every exhausted patrolman in the room heard it. "Do you know what a genin from the Sarutobi clan makes on average? 60,000 ryo. A Sarutobi jonin makes 140,000. Now tell me, clan leader, if the third Hokage's family has that much surplus wealth, why is he begging an Uchiha to fund the village?" Fugaku stood frozen, his jaw locked. Akira took another step forward, his voice rising in fury. "You want our clan to work for free, day and night, policing streets for people who spit on us? And while we do, Danzo Shimura is butchering our brothers and sisters in the shadows." "Enough!" Fugaku roared. "Uchiha Akira! Who told you about Danzo? That is a baseless, treasonous lie!" Akira threw his head back and laughed. It was a cold, mocking sound that chilled the spine. "How foolish can you be? Tell me, Lord Fugaku," Akira said, his voice dropping into an icy, carrying calm that forced the entire shrine to lean in. "Have you never noticed the pattern?" Fugaku's Sharingan burned in the dim light. "What pattern?" "Every time a squad of Uchiha leaves the village for a mission outside the borders," Akira stated slowly, letting each word hang in the suffocating silence. How is it that an enemy platoon is always waiting exactly on our patrol route to ambush us? The room went completely still. A few of the veteran jonin in the crowd exchanged uneasy, wide-eyed glances. The enemy always seems to know our exact numbers, our exact paths, and our exact departure times, Akira continued, his gaze sweeping over the crowd, daring them to deny it. And when the Leaf reinforcement squads finally arrive, what do they find? Akira turned back to Fugaku, his voice dropping to a vicious, venomous whisper. They find the enemy squad dead, Akira said. They find our Uchiha brothers and sisters dead. But strangely, the Sharingan eyes of our fallen are always missing, gouged out, plucked clean. The silence in the Naka shrine was absolute. The air grew so heavy it was hard to breathe. I ask you, clan leader, Akira demanded, his eyes flashing crimson. If the enemy shinobi were all killed in the ambush, who took their eyes? The realization hit the crowd like a physical blow. The exhausted mothers, the angry patrolmen, the elders, everyone stared at Akira in sheer, unadulterated horror. Fugaku's face was as dark as a thunderhead. His fists shook. He had suspected this for years, but the political fallout of accusing the village elders of harvesting Uchiha eyes was apocalyptic. He had never dared to say it out loud. Do you have proof of these accusations? Fugaku demanded, his voice dangerously low. Akira looked at the man, his eyes utterly devoid of respect. You truly do not deserve to sit in that chair. You are dragging this clan to its slaughter. Behind Akira, Iso buried his face in his hands, murmuring into his palms. He's dead. He just committed suicide. Do not speculate on matters beyond your comprehension, Fugaku bellowed, his voice echoing with chakra to regain control of the spiraling room. This assembly is over. Dismissed. In the darkest corner of the shrine, leaning against a stone pillar, Uchiha Itachi and Uchiha Shisui watched the scene unfold in silence. As the clan members began to murmur and filter out, utterly shaken by Akira's words, Itachi slowly turned his head to look at his best friend. Shisui's face was grave. He gave a microscopic nod. He is unstable, Shisui whispered, his eyes locked on Akira's retreating back. If he spreads those thoughts, he will ignite the coup himself. We need to report this to the Hokage immediately. Less than an hour later, the two prodigies knelt on the hardwood floor of the Hokage's office. The third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, sat behind his desk, the smoke from his pipe curling heavily around his weathered, deeply lined face. He listened in silence as Itachi delivered the report with cold, detached precision. Yes, Lord Hokage, Itachi concluded, his dark eyes betraying no emotion. Uchiha Akira is a radical. He did not even give the clan leader face in front of the assembly. He openly accused the administration of theft and murder. Hiruzen frowned, his eyes narrowing through the thick haze of tobacco smoke. He let out a long, heavy sigh. You are dismissed, Hiruzen rasped. Keep an eye on him. Go. Itachi and Shisui bowed their heads and vanished in twin swirls of leaves. The moment the office was empty, the sliding door to the side room clicked open. Danzo Shimura stepped out from the shadows, his lone visible eye fixed coldly on the Hokage. He leaned heavily on his cane, the bandages wrapping his right arm and eye practically glowing in the dim moonlight. Hiruzen, Danzo said, his voice like grinding stones. We must kill this Uchiha Akira tonight. He is an unstable, volatile factor. The boy is a merchant, a mere genin with a single Tomo Sharingan. If he disappears in the dark, Danzo's visible eye narrowed. No one will care. Hiruzen Sarutobi said nothing. He sat in his chair, taking a long, slow drag from his pipe. He exhaled a thick cloud of smoke, his aged eyes cold and calculating. No, Hiruzen finally said. We cannot touch him now. Danzo frowned, his lone eye narrowing. Why hesitate, Hiruzen? Because the boy just stood in front of his entire clan and accused us, Hiruzen replied firmly. If Uchiha Akira suddenly turns up dead in an alley tomorrow, the Uchiha will know exactly who did it. It will justify every word he said and ignite a civil war overnight. Let the situation cool down for a few weeks. When the clan's paranoia fades, I will issue him a mandatory solo mission far from the village. You can have your operatives take care of him then, but right now, you do not touch him. Danzo's grip tightened on his cane. It is simpler than that, Hiruzen. Transfer him to my route immediately. I will personally interrogate him to see if he can be instilled with a will of fire. If he cannot, then he will tragically die in the line of duty. Hiruzen contemplated this, stroking his goatee. After a long moment of silence, he nodded slowly. I will speak to Fugaku. The boy embarrassed him deeply tonight. Fugaku will likely consent to transferring him to a special division, just to get him out of the compound. Danzo smiled knowingly and nodded. Excellent. This was the tacit understanding between the two old men. Hiruzen played the benevolent leader in the light, and Danzo did the necessary butchering in the dark. 2 days later, inside the Uchiha compound, Akira knelt politely across a low tea table from the head of the Dove faction, the oldest and most moderate elder in the clan. The elder poured a cup of green tea, his expression guarded. Akira, the old man said wearily, if you came here to recruit me for a coup, you can leave. It is not going to happen. From your behavior at the shrine, it is painfully clear that you hate the Hokage. Akira smiled warmly, picking up his teacup. Elder, you misunderstand me. It isn't that I hate the Hokage. It is simply that I love my clan. Akira set the cup down, his gaze turning razor sharp. And to save my family, I would dare to fight all 5 great nations. The elder's eyes widened slightly, taken aback by the sheer conviction in the boy's voice. Tell me, elder, Akira continued smoothly. When my parents died, who gave me food? The Uchiha. Who gave me my freedom? The Uchiha. Who gave me the jutsu I used to survive? The Uchiha. Akira blinked once, his irises flashing into the blood red of the Sharingan. Who gave me these eyes? The Uchiha. Akira leaned forward. Which 2 clans built Konoha from the dirt? The Senju and the Uchiha. So where did this divide come from? Konoha belongs to us just as much as them. The elder stared at him seriously. So, you want to overthrow the administration and become Hokage? Akira scoffed, laughing softly. Hokage? What is the benefit of becoming Hokage, Elder? Endless paperwork, managing ungrateful civilian councils, scheming against rival clans in the dark. What good is that miserable position? No, I don't want to rule the Leaf. I want the Uchiha to be wealthy, proud, and completely untouchable. The Elder studied the young man's face. You are much smarter than the rest of our hot-blooded youth, Akira. So what exactly do you want from me? Akira didn't blink. I want you to call an assembly and recommend me for a seat on the Council of Elders. The Dove Elder frowned deeply, shaking his head. You are too young. You have money, yes, but being a successful merchant is not enough of a reason to give you a seat on the highest council. Why? The Elder asked, his voice calm but heavy with suspicion. Do you desire the position of Elder? As an ordinary member, the clan will not follow my business directives, Akira countered. But as an Elder, I have the authority to command investments in restructure our economy. And if I am made an Elder, I will personally invest 40 billion ryo into the clan's infrastructure. The Elder froze, his jaw practically unhinged. 40 billion? Konoha's entire annual operating budget was barely 20 billion ryo. Akira was offering double the GDP of the entire Hidden Leaf village. How could you possibly have that kind of money? The Elder stammered. Akira just smiled. That is the power of a monopoly, Elder. This is what I want to teach our people. We need to transcend beyond being mere police officers. We need to own the economy. Akira snapped his fingers. The sliding door opened, and Iso stepped inside. He was carrying 2 heavy briefcases. He set them down, walked out, and returned with 2 more. 4 massive briefcases were stacked neatly next to the tea table. Iso popped the latches on the top case, revealing dense, immaculate stacks of high-denomination bills. 100 million ryo, Akira said softly. Please, Elder, accept my sincere gift. Consider it a down payment on my promise. The Elder stared at the mountain of cash, his heart hammering against his ribs. To become a clan Elder, a candidate needed either the direct appointment of the clan leader, which Fugaku would never grant, or need the majority vote of 3 out of the 5 current Elders. Slowly, almost in a daze, the Dove Elder nodded. Okay, from what you have said, I believe I can trust you. I will call the meeting, but my vote alone is not enough, Akira. You need 2 more. Akira smiled, his Sharingan spinning in the dim light. Don't worry, Elder. I have plenty of briefcases. By the end of the night, Akira had visited all 5 elders. The results were exactly as he expected. One Hawk Elder took one look at the money, practically jumped out of his seat, and swore absolute loyalty on the spot. 2 others agreed after a bit of persuasion and heavy bribes. Only one Elder, a staunch, unwavering loyalist to Fugaku, refused the money and kicked Akira out. It didn't matter. 4 out of 5 had agreed. He only needed 3. Later that night, Akira walked through the quiet streets of the Uchiha compound toward his home. The cool night air brushed against his face, but his mind was racing at 100 miles an hour. I need that Elder title formalized immediately, he thought, his eyes scanning the shadows for Anbu watchers. He wasn't stupid. He knew Itachi and Shisui had reported his outburst to the Hokage. He knew Hiruzen had likely taken him seriously as a threat. The Hokage's playbook was entirely predictable. Sometime in the next few days, a mandatory mission scroll would be delivered to Akira's door. It would be a solo assignment. It would be highly classified, and he would die out there, murdered by root assassins, labeled killed in action to keep the clan from rebelling. But Konoha law had a loophole. Clan elders were strictly exempt from the Hokage's mandatory active duty drafts. They answered only to the clan head and the internal council. If I become an elder before that mission scroll arrives, Akira thought, a cold smirk pulling at his lips, Hiruzen and Danzo lose their legal jurisdiction to send me out of the village. I will be untouchable. Days later, the summons came. Fugaku called for another emergency clan assembly. The underground cavern of the Naka Shrine was packed. The air was thick with unease. In the back corner, concealed in the shadows, Uchiha Itachi and Uchiha Shisui stood in perfect silence, watching the room fill. Then, the heavy doors slid open. Uchiha Akira walked in, flanked by a dozen of his men. He didn't skulk to the back this time. He walked straight down the center aisle, the crowd parting for him, and took a seat directly at the front, right in Fugaku's line of sight. Fugaku glared at him, but wasted no time. As soon as the murmurs died down, the clan leader spoke. Uchiha Akira. Fugaku's voice echoed off the stone walls, heavy and authoritative. The 3rd Hokage has taken an interest in your talents. He has personally recommended your immediate transfer to the Anbu training division, known as Root. A collective gasp swept through the shrine. Every ninja in the room stared at Akira. They weren't fools. They knew what this was. It wasn't a promotion. It was an execution. Akira was being punished for his treasonous words at the last meeting. Akira didn't flinch. He remained seated, looked Fugaku in the eye, and said flatly, I refuse. Fugaku's Sharingan flared. You do not have a choice, Akira. You are a shinobi of the Leaf. You will follow the Hokage's command. A Dove Elder sitting nearby sighed heavily, shaking his head. Such a bright kid, sacrificed for running his mouth, the old man thought. One of the Hawk Elders slammed his fist on the floor. Fugaku, the boy is an Uchiha. Why didn't you reject the Hokage's order? Fugaku looked at the aggressive elder, his expression tight. Because by agreeing to this transfer, the Hokage has finally agreed to release emergency funding for the police force. Akira tilted his head. Oh, and how much is my life worth, clan leader? Fugaku glared at him. That is none of your business. Of course it is my business, Akira shot back, his voice rising so the whole room could hear. I am a subordinate of police force. My salary hasn't increased in 6 years, and my back pay is chronically delayed. When will you pay me what I owed? Fugaku sneered, losing his patience. You run half the commercial district, Akira. You are swimming in wealth. Why do you care about a meager police salary? It was the exact mistake Akira had been waiting for. Akira smiled, but his eyes were entirely devoid of warmth. He stood up, turning his back to Fugaku to face the rest of the clan. Did you all hear that? Akira asked the crowd. My businesses are my family's private venture, yet the clan leader just declared that because I make my own money, I forfeit my rightful wages at the station. Akira pointed to a scarred Jonin in the second row. What about you? If you complete a dangerous S-rank mission and earn a 10 million Ryo bounty, will the clan leader dock your police salary too, simply because you already have enough money? Panic instantly rippled through the crowd. Is that true? A patrolman shouted. Are you going to deduct our pay if we take side missions? We've been working the streets for free, another yelled. Seeing the sudden agitation, Fugaku panicked slightly. Uchiha were warriors, not accountants. They had never considered the financial technicalities until Akira spelled it out for them. Quiet, Fugaku commanded. It is not like that. I only spoke of Akira because of his transfer. Everyone will be paid. The Hokage has granted us 50 million Ryo. The room quieted slightly at the large number, but Akira just laughed. 50 million, Akira mocked, shaking his head. Clan leader, the standard monthly operating expense for the Konoha military police force is 15 million Ryo. The Hokage usually starves us with 4 or 5 million a month. That 50 million doesn't even cover the deficit. It only pays off 2 months of back pay. Akira paced in front of the crowd, doing the math out loud, like a blade carving into their remaining hope. The village hasn't paid us properly in 6 years. Even if the Hokage gave us 50 million every single month, it would take 2 full years just to settle the debt, and that doesn't even account for wartime inflation. Groceries, weapons, bandages, everything costs twice as much now. It will take 4 years just to break even. A suffocating dread settled over the shrine. The clan members looked at each other in horror. The realization was absolute. They were financially enslaved. They would never get their money back. Even the elders sitting at the front frowned, deeply disturbed by the numbers. Akira turned back to Fugaku, his expression turning deadly serious. Fine, Akira said, his voice dropping to a chilling calm. You want me to join Root? I will go. Fugaku blinked, surprised by the sudden surrender. Akira reached into his flak jacket and pulled out a thick, sealed scroll. He unrolled it, letting the long parchment hit the floor. But before I go, Akira said, his voice echoing in the silence, I want an explanation for this. Fugaku looked at the scroll. What is that? This, Akira said, his red eyes locking onto Fugaku, is a list of 122 names. Every single one of them is an Uchiha who was transferred into Danzo's root over the last 5 years. The air in the room went ice cold. Tell me, clan leader, Akira demanded, where are their bodies? Danzo claims they all died in foreign lands, yet their corpses are never returned to the compound. We never see their bodies again. Akira stepped right up to the dais, pointing an accusatory finger directly at Fugaku's chest. I want to know what this clan achieved by sacrificing 122 of our brothers and sisters, not on a battlefield, but inside our own village. The room felt tighter. I suspect you are colluding with Danzo Shimura to butcher this clan. Chaos erupted. The entire shrine exploded into shouting. Even Shisui and Itachi in the corner exchanged deeply shaken looks. Akira hadn't just insulted the clan leader today. He had essentially accused him of orchestrating a genocide. How dare you! A voice roared over. 3 of Fugaku's most fanatical loyalists stood up from the front row, their eyes snapped open, blazing with the fully matured 3-tome Sharingan. The sheer pressure of their chakra washed over the room. You insolent brat, the lead loyalist spat, drawing a kunai. You haven't even awakened a fully matured Sharingan. You're a 1-tome weakling who couldn't survive a single blow from me. How dare you hurl such vile allegations at Lord Fugaku? The loyalist stepped forward, intending to physically drag Akira out of the shrine. Akira didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't activate his eyes. He simply stood his ground, opened his arms wide to the furious loyalists, and looked past them to the hundreds of ordinary clan members watching. Strike me down, Akira shouted, his voice cracking with fierce manufactured emotion. Call me weak, but this clan is my family. Is it a crime to demand the truth when our brothers and sisters are being slaughtered? The 3-tomo loyalist faltered for a fraction of a second, the sheer conviction in Akira's voice catching him off guard. But he kept his kunai raised, his jaw set in anger. Akira slowly lowered his arms. The fiery defiance vanished from his face, replaced by a cold, cutting calm. You say you are strong, Akira mocked softly. You boast about your 3-tomo Sharingan and your power. Fine, if you are so strong, help me with a simple request. Akira turned away from the man, looking toward the crowd of men he had brought with him. Suru, come here. The crowd parted, and a nervous 6-year-old boy stepped forward into the dim light. He looked terrified by the heavy tension in the room, his small hands anxiously clutching the hem of his shirt. Akira gently placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, his voice softening. Tell this strong, powerful man the request you asked of me the other day. The boy swallowed hard. He looked up at the 3-tome loyalist, his voice trembling but earnest. I want to see my dad for my next birthday. Can you bring him home? I haven't seen him in 3 years. He didn't even come to my academy graduation ceremony. A sudden, suffocating wave of melancholy washed over the shrine. The angry shouts died in the throats of the loyalists. The man with the kunai lowered his weapon slightly, his aggression dissolving into confused pity. Who is your father, kid? The loyalist asked gently. The boy puffed out his chest, his voice filled with innocent pride. Uchiha Metsu! The loyalist frowned, looking back at his comrades. None of them recognized the name. Let me refresh your memory, Akira said coldly. He reached into his pouch, pulled out a small leather-bound ledger, and flipped it open. Uchiha Metsu, drafted into Root under the direct orders of clan leader Fugaku, exactly 3 years, 5 months, and 12 days ago. Akira snapped the book shut, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the silent room. Is it really so much to ask Danzo for a single afternoon of leave so a father can attend his son's graduation? Akira asked the loyalist. The 3-tomo shinobi had no answer. He slowly stepped back, the fight completely drained out of him. Akira whipped around, his Sharingan locking onto Fugaku. You gave the order, clan leader, Akira's voice boomed. I ask you, where is this boy's father? Because Root certainly isn't paying his family. His father hasn't sent a single Ryo home to his wife in over 3 years. Fugaku flinched, his eyes darting to the boy. How do you think they survive, Lord Fugaku? Akira demanded, stepping closer to the dais. I only found out about this because his mother came to my door begging for a loan. Do you have any idea how much debt she accumulated just trying to feed her son before she swallowed her pride and asked for help? Akira didn't wait for an answer. He turned to the crowd and roared it. 5 million ryo! Gasps rippled through the audience. She was starving, Akira yelled, turning his fury back on Fugaku. If I hadn't stepped in and paid her debts, what was she supposed to do? How long was she supposed to suffer while her husband rots in Danzo's underground cells? Was she supposed to starve to death for the sake of the village? Fugaku's face darkened drastically. He looked down at the 6-year-old boy staring up at him, and a heavy, sickening wave of guilt crashed into his chest. He hadn't known. He couldn't keep track of the finances of every single family. But what could I do? Fugaku thought bitterly. I cannot defy the Hokage's draft orders. Akira watched the clan leader's silence, his eyes filled with absolute, unfiltered disgust. Look at you, Akira sneered, his voice dropping into a quiet, devastating whisper that the whole room heard. Once again, you have no answers. Akira didn't wait for the clan leader's weak excuses. He turned his back on Fugaku, facing the hundreds of Uchiha, mothers and veterans who were hanging on his every word. I know the laws of this village, Akira said, his voice echoing over the silent crowd. As a Konoha shinobi, I cannot legally discard a direct deployment order from the clan leader or the Hokage. He reached up, his fingers wrapping around the knot of his leaf headband. Therefore, Akira said, his voice ringing with absolute chilling finality. He pulled the knot loose, the metal plate slid from his forehead, and he let it drop onto the stone floor with a sharp clack. I resign my commission as a shinobi of the Hidden Leaf. A collective gasp sucked all the air out of the shrine. Even Fugaku's eyes widened in sheer, unadulterated shock. In the shinobi world, becoming a ninja was the ultimate honor. To willingly strip off your headband and declare yourself a civilian was practically unheard of. It was an act of profound, almost suicidal defiance. As a civilian, I no longer fall under the military jurisdiction of the Hokage, Akira declared, staring out at the stunned faces of his family. And I no longer have the right to stand in this high council. Akira bowed his head slightly to the crowd, his face a mask of sorrowful dignity. Take care of yourselves, my brothers and sisters, Akira said softly. I only had one dream in this life, to see the Uchiha prosper again, but I am not strong enough to protect you from the shadows. Without another word, Akira turned and began walking down the center aisle, heading straight for the heavy wooden exit doors. The crowd parted for him in complete silence. Fugaku's face turned ashen. He realized, with a sickening drop in his stomach, exactly what had just happened. Akira had martyred himself. If Akira walked out those doors as a civilian, stripped of his rank because he dared to speak the truth, Fugaku would permanently lose the trust and confidence of the entire police force. Uchiha Akira, wait! A loud commanding voice broke the silence. Akira stopped, glancing back over his shoulder. It was the head of the Dove faction. The elderly man stood up from his seat at the front, leaning heavily on his cane, his face set with deep conviction. What you have said today has truly opened my eyes, the Dove elder declared, his voice carrying over the murmuring crowd. There is a great deal of deception occurring right under our noses. I see now that we have grown deaf to the cries of our own people. You, Akira, have become the voice of the common Uchiha, a voice that we desperately needed to hear. The elder slammed his cane against the floor. Therefore, I formally propose a motion to grant Uchiha Akira a permanent seat on the Council of Elders. The shrine erupted into chaos. Elder, you cannot be serious, the 3 Tomei loyalists from earlier shouted, pointing at Akira. He just discarded his headband. He is a civilian. We have never allowed a non-combatant to sit on the High Council. And perhaps that is exactly why we are failing, the Dove elder shot back fiercely. We need a civilian voice at the table to represent the families struggling to survive our endless wars. We need new blood among us old fogies. Yes, a patrolman in the back shouted. We need Akira on the council. Put him on the council, another voice roared. Within seconds, half the room was shouting in agreement. In the dark corner of the shrine, Itachi and Shisui panicked. They exchanged rapid, horrified glances. What do we do? Itachi whispered, his Sharingan spinning frantically. If he becomes an elder, he has diplomatic immunity. The Hokage cannot draft him into root. We can't do anything, Shisui hissed back, his jaw tight. If we intervene now, the clan will riot. Just stay put and watch. At the front of the room, the Dove elder looked at Fugaku. Let us settle this the old-fashioned way, clan leader. A formal council vote. Fugaku stared deeply at the Dove elder, his mind racing. Why is the Dove faction supporting a radical? Fugaku wondered frantically. Does this old man truly believe Akira can bring us peace? Fugaku looked at the riled-up crowd. He couldn't deny a formal motion without sparking a mutiny. He had to trust his council. He slowly nodded. Very well. A formal vote. Fugaku raised his hand, his face a mask of stone. As clan leader, I vote not in favor. Immediately, the elder seated to Fugaku's right, a staunch hardcore loyalist, raised his hand. I also vote not in favor. 2 votes against. The room held its breath, all eyes turning to the remaining 4 elders on the dais. Akira needed 3 votes to secure the majority. The Dove elder raised his hand high. I vote in favor. 1 vote for. 2 against. The tension was suffocating. 3 elders remained. The crowd watched the Hawk faction elders, men who historically despised the Doves and constantly bickered with them. Surely they would vote with Fugaku. The 3 remaining elders looked at each other. They didn't hesitate. In perfect un-Akiran, all 3 men raised their hands. We vote in favor. The shrine exploded. What? Fugachu's eyes bulged in absolute shock. Even the loyalist elder beside him gaped like a fish. The Hawks had just aligned with the Doves? It was politically impossible. But the raised hands didn't lie. 4 votes to 2. It was over. A deafening cheer went up in the exhausted patrolman in the crowd. In the back of the room, Akira slowly turned around, a faint, terrifying smirk pulling at the corner of his mouth. Uchiha Akira, the Dove elder shouted over the roaring crowd, his eyes shining with triumph. Come to the stage. Take your seat. Akira stepped onto the raised stage and slowly turned to face the gathered members of the Uchiha clan. Hundreds of familiar faces stared back at him. Warriors, elders, mothers, children's eyes that carried pride, suspicion, hope, and long-buried resentment. He bowed deeply. "Thank you," his voice rang out, steady and commanding. "Thank you, all of you, for showing such faith in me. I swear on the honor of our crest that I will not let you down." He slowly straightened, his gaze sweeping over the proud faces of his kin. Finally, his eyes settled on the stoic, heavy-set figure of the clan head. "As an elder of this clan," Akira began, his tone shifting from gratitude to serious business. "Clan head Fugaku, I wish to put forth a suggestion tonight, one meant to ensure the prosperity and survival of our people." Fugaku's face remained an unreadable mask, but he gave a single, curt nod. "Speak." "I propose we re-evaluate the absolute authority granted to the clan head in making unilateral decisions for the Uchiha," Akira declared, the words hanging heavy in the damp air. "It has become abundantly clear that Fugaku-sama's decisions are far too influenced by the Hokages, and it's often to the severe detriment of Uchiha interests." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Fugaku's eyes narrowed, a dangerous glint flickering within them, but Akira did not waver. "Allow me to provide an example," Akira continued, stepping closer to the edge of the stage. "Let us speak of the night the Nine Tails attacked our village. It is a well-known fact that the Sharingan possesses the power to subdue and control the beast. Yet on that night, the Uchiha did not march to the front lines. We stepped back. That absence caused a devastating loss of life for Konoha and cast a permanent shadow of suspicion upon us." Akira leaned forward. His voice pierced the tense silence. "I want to ask our clan head, why?" Fugaku stared up at Akira menacingly. Even now, years later, the bitter regret of that night ate at his soul. His jaw tightened, but he forced the words out. "It was by the Hokage's orders." "Is that so?" Akira challenged smoothly. "Tell us then, how exactly did the fourth Hokage, Minato-sama, manage to contact you while he was fiercely battling the beast to protect the village?" Fugaku stiffened. "It was not the fourth Hokage, it was the third Hokage's order. As we were mobilizing our forces to enter the conflict, Root Anbu appeared at our gates and issued an order for us to stand down and begin civilian relocation." The murmurs in the shrine grew louder, laced with confusion and rising anger. "Clan head," Akira said, his voice cutting through the noise like a kunai. "As far as the laws of this village dictate, Hiruzen Sarutobi had abdicated his seat. We had absolutely no obligation to follow the orders of a retired Hokage. Why did you obey him?" Akira swept his gaze across the crowd, rallying them. "Let me ask you all, is it not our sacred duty as the Leaf's strongest clan to protect the reigning fourth Hokage with all our might when he is in danger, instead of hiding in the corners of the village while he fought and died?" The shrine erupted into furious whispers. "He's right. Why did we listen to the third? He wasn't even the Hokage then." Akira raised a hand, silencing the hall once more. "Because of that decision, the civilians of Konoha whisper about us every single day. They say we ran away. They say we didn't dare fight the Nine Tails, or worse, that we were the ones who unleashed it. Our people are being pushed to the outskirts, alienated from the very village we helped build. Can you not see the distance growing day by day?" Akira locked eyes with Fugaku again. "If it was truly the third Hokage who gave you that order, why haven't you demanded that he publicly announce it? Why hasn't he cleared the villagers' doubts and restored our name?" Fugaku's face darkened, the weight of his impossible position crushing down on him. He spoke solemnly, his voice tinged with bitter resignation. "I did ask him, but the third feared that if the villagers knew he kept the Uchiha from saving the fourth, they would condemn his decision. He claimed it would break the unity between the villagers and the Hokage's office." Akira let out a harsh, humorless scoff. "So," his voice dropped to a lethal whisper that echoed perfectly in the silent room, "to protect the reputation of the third Hokage, you chose to suppress the interests and honor of the Uchiha." A suffocating tension clamped down on the Naka shrine. Standing near the back of the hall, Shishui Uchiha closed his eyes, his fists clenching tight at his sides. The raw, heavy emotion in the room was palpable. Looking around at the faces of his aunts, uncles, and cousins, Shishui felt a painful knot form in his chest. Akira was right. They had been sacrificed for politics. For the first time, a profound, unified sense of being deeply wronged washed over the entire Uchiha clan. And in the shadows of the shrine, the embers of rebellion began to burn brighter than ever before. As you have all just heard, our clan head is highly influenced by the Hokage's office, so much so that he obeys orders from a man who had already retired. We can all see the truth. The third Hokage prioritizes his own political image while leaving the Uchiha's image to rot. Akira held up two fingers. "Let me give you a second example. Cast your minds back to the end of the Third Shinobi World War. When the village forces returned, the streets were filled with cheers. Every civilian knew exactly what the Sarutobi shinobi did on the battlefield. They sang the praises of the Shimura clan, the Ino Shika Cho trio. But what of the Uchiha?" Akira's eyes burned as he looked at the crowd. "We bled just as much. We lost brothers, fathers, and daughters. Yet why did the village know nothing of our achievements? Why were our sacrifices buried in silence?" He turned sharply, pointing a rigid finger at Fugaku. This deliberate suppression bred nothing but distrust between the villagers and our clan. "So I ask you, clan head Fugaku, when our warriors returned in caskets and the village looked at us with cold indifference, what did you do to uplift the Uchiha image?" Fugaku sat frozen. The crushing weight of guilt settled heavily in his chest. He remembered the meetings, the subtle dismissals from the council, his own passive acceptance in the name of village peace. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. He looked away, his silence echoing louder than a shout. "Nothing," Akira answered for him, his voice dripping with disappointment. "You did nothing." Akira turned his back on the clan head, addressing his kin directly. "Tell me, how are we supposed to build any affinity with the villagers like this? If they don't know our heroes, if they don't trust our strength, how will they ever support an Uchiha to become Hokage?" The shrine fell dead silent. A collective gasp rippled through the gathered members. Eyes widened in sudden, horrifying realization. That was it. That was the reason the Uchiha were never even considered for the Hokage's hat. It wasn't a lack of strength. It was a systematic assassination of their public image. "Look at our current reality," Akira pressed on, his voice rising with passionate fury. "We were relocated to the absolute edge of the village. The civilians never interact with us organically anymore. There are no casual meetings in the markets to build bonds. All they see now is a clan they believe ran away from the Nine Tails, a clan that did nothing in the war, and a clan that only suppressed them as a police. They think we are bullies because that is the only role the village leadership allows us to play. Murmurs of furious agreement erupted. Heads nodded vigorously. The resentment that had been simmering for years was finally boiling over. That is enough, Akira. An older, weathered voice cut through the clamor. It was Yashiro, an elder known for his moderate, dove-leaning views. He stepped out from the shadows of the council seating. You have spoken enough. Now tell us what you are suggesting. Akira nodded respectfully to the Dove Elder, then swept his gaze across the room. Including myself, there are currently 6 active elders. With the clan head, we are 7 in total, Akira stated, his tone shifting to pure, calculating politics. I propose that from this night forward, absolute power no longer rests in the hands of one man. Every major decision concerning the clan must require a minimum of 4 votes to pass. I can no longer blindly trust the future of the Uchiha to the clan head alone. The shrine buzzed with frantic whispers. Taking away the clan head's authority? That's unprecedented. The Dove Elder turned his gaze to the front. What do you think of this, Fugaku? Fugaku looked at Akira, then at the sea of angry, disillusioned faces of his people. His mind raced. If I say no now, I will lose whatever credibility I have left. They might even call for a vote of no confidence. Deep down, a weary part of him also recognized that Akira was right. His decisions had been biased toward appeasing the village elders, often at his clan's expense. Fugaku closed his eyes, exhaling a long breath. All right, I agree to the proposal. Preposterous, snapped another elder, a staunch loyalist to Fugaku, leaping to his feet. There is a reason we have a clan head. He leads, we follow. You cannot strip away his authority like this. It weakens our structure. Akira held up a placating hand. Then let us compromise. I propose we give the clan head double voting power. His vote will be counted as 2, while the 6 elders will possess 1 vote each. The total pool becomes 8 votes. Akira looked directly at the loyalist elder. Is this not fair? For a decision to pass, it needs a majority of 5. With his double vote, and you faithfully at his side, he already has 3 votes. He would only need to convince 2 other elder to pass any decision, but it ensures he cannot act completely alone. The loyalist elder blinked, doing the math in his head. He slowly sank back into his seat, somewhat relaxed by the logic. It wasn't a total loss of power, it was a safeguard. The Dove Elder stepped forward, a glint of approval in his eyes. Very well. Let us test this new system immediately. We will vote on this very proposal to change our governing structure. All those in favor, raise your hands. It was a brilliant political trap, and everyone knew it. The new rule decentralized power, giving the elders unprecedented influence over the clan's future. What elder in their right mind would refuse that? Instantly, hands shot into the air. Akira counted them aloud. 5 elders raised their hands. Then, slowly, heavily, Fugaku raised his hand as well, casting his 2 votes in favor of his own demotion. Only the loyalist elder kept his hand down, scowling with a mix of loyalty and resignation. 7 votes yes, 1 vote no, Akira declared, satisfaction curling the edge of his lips. The proposal is passed. The loyalist elder looked at Fugaku helplessly. If even the clan had agreed, what could he possibly do? Fugaku stood, his heavy robes shifting around him. He looked out over the clan, his expression softer, yet more resolute than it had been in years. This system is good, Fugaku spoke, his voice carrying a solemn vow. It will force us to deliberate. It will help us take decisions strictly in the favor of the Uchiha Clan, something I admit I have neglected for too long. From tonight on, we stand together. The Naka shrine was still buzzing with the sheer weight of the political shift when Fugaku turned his dark gaze back to the man who had just orchestrated it. Akira, Fugaku said, his voice carrying a newfound respect and cautious weariness. Do you have anything else to say? Akira met the clan head's gaze and gave a slow, deliberate nod. Yes, earlier, I spoke of the 9 Tails incident. Almost instantly, the atmosphere in the room soured. Fugaku's face darkened, the muscles in his jaw ticking. In the shadows near the back, both Shisui and a young Itachi frowned, exchanging troubled glances. Why bring it up again, they thought. The point was made. Is he just a vengeful spirit, incapable of letting a grudge go? But Akira's expression remained perfectly calm. That incident is in the past, he stated smoothly as he paced across the stage. We cannot change what happened that night, but what we can do is correct the catastrophic mistakes that followed it. To that end, I propose my first official motion under our new council. I request the clan head to immediately retire 50% of all Uchiha personnel from the Konoha military police force. Dead silence fell over the shrine. For a moment, nobody breathed. Then, chaos erupted. Are you insane? One of the elders who had just voted for him shouted, his face purple with outrage. The police force is our greatest asset. You want us to voluntarily surrender half our power? Even Yashiro, the usually calm Dove elder, frowned deeply. Akira, what are you saying? You just spoke of protecting our interests, yet now you propose we abandon them? This makes you look like a fool. Akira simply smiled. It was a sharp, knowing smile that slowly quieted the furious murmurs of the crowd. No, I am not a fool, Akira said, his voice echoing clearly. Let me explain the reality of our power. Right now, whenever our officers go on patrol, who do the villagers see? When a merchant is fined, when a drunkard is arrested, when a dispute is harshly suppressed, who do they look at? They look at the fan crest on our backs. In their eyes, it is not the police maintaining order, it is the Uchiha clan bullying them. The murmurs in the crowd faltered. A few officers in the audience shifted uncomfortably, knowing exactly what Akira meant. Now, Akira continued, his eyes gleaming, what if we removed 50% of our active members and invite shinobi from other clans to fill those ranks? We still retain the top leadership, we still hold 50% of the force. But this time, when a civilian gets angry about a ticket, they won't curse the Uchiha, they will curse the police department. Akira raised a hand, emphasizing his point. The hatred directed at our bloodline will vanish entirely, absorbed by an institution where every clan in the village works, and we won't have to shed a single drop of blood to achieve it. A profound, stunned silence washed over the room. The furious elder who had been yelling slowly sank back into his seat, his eyes wide as the brilliance of the strategy dawned on him. Furthermore, Akira pressed on, his tone shifting from philosophical to purely opportunistic. We do not just give these positions away, we will sell these coveted spots. The other clans will eagerly pay us for the authority and prestige of joining the police force, bringing massive funds directly into our clan's coffers. Akira began to pace again, his voice echoing with undeniable authority. As those outside shinobi work side by side with our men on daily patrols, they will inevitably warm up to us. Camaraderie is forged in duty. Their prejudices will shatter. And to the village, it sends a flawless political message. The Uchiha do not cling to power. We are willing to share it for the good of Konoha. Fugaku sat frozen in his chair. His heart was pounding against his ribs. He stared at Akira as if seeing a ghost. Is this man secretly a Nara? Fugaku thought wildly. How could I have never thought of something so brilliantly manipulative? It solves our public image problem, builds alliances, and secures our funding all at once. And there is one final crucial benefit, Akira said, a sly, almost dangerous smirk playing on his lips. For years, the Hokage has been quietly cutting the police force's budget. He delays our salaries because he knows it only hurts the Uchiha and no one else in the village cares. But, Akira let the word hang in the air for a moment, if the Inoshika-cho, the Hyuga, and the Sarutobi clans suddenly have their own brothers and sons in the police force, if the Hokage dares to delay the salaries then, he won't just be sliding the Uchiha, he will incur the absolute wrath of every major clan in the Hidden Leaf. Akira spread his arms wide. At the very least, our remaining 50% will finally receive their full salaries on time. Eyes widened across the cavern. Jaws practically hit the floor. The political trap Akira had just designed for the third Hokage was so airtight, so deeply devious. It was beautiful. But the loyalist elder, sweating and desperate to find a flaw, shot to his feet. That sounds fine in theory, he stammered. But what about the reality? What about the 50% of our men who leave the force? What are they supposed to do? Starve? And what possible excuse will we give the Hokage for deliberately gutting our own ranks? Akira's smile widened into a full-blown, triumphant grin. The excuse is beautifully simple. We tell the Hokage the honest truth. Because his administration has failed to pay our salaries, our members are resigning to find work that actually puts food on the table. Akira took a deep breath, letting his gaze sweep over the eager, hungry faces of his kin. As for what our men will do, I, Uchiha Akira, am personally investing 40 billion ryo into multiple new commercial enterprises. I intend to build an economic empire that will make the Uchiha prosperous once more, and I am officially giving 50% of the shares of this enterprise directly to the Uchiha clan. A collective, breathless gasp sucked the air out of the room. 40 billion ryo, 50% shares to the clan. That was wealth beyond their wildest comprehension. To run a mercantile empire of this size, I need an immense amount of loyal, disciplined manpower, Akira declared, his voice ringing like a bell of salvation. Therefore, I am willing to pay a starting salary of 120,000 ryo a month to every single Uchiha member who leaves the police force to work for me. The Naka shrine exploded. 120,000 ryo? That was nearly triple what a standard patrolman made, and that was assuming the Hokage even bothered to authorize their paychecks. Men and women in the crowd began whispering frantically to each other, their eyes alight with a frantic, joyous fervor that hadn't been seen in the compound for years. 120,000? One Chunin gasped to his neighbor. Forget the Hokage's measly pay. I'm turning in my badge first thing tomorrow morning. Me too. Where do we sign up? Up on the dais, the loyalist elder sank back into his chair, his mouth opening and closing like a suffocating fish. He looked to Fugaku for help, but the clan head was just as stunned, a slow smile of disbelief creeping onto his own face. Against flawless logic, political genius, and a mountain of gold, the loyalist elder couldn't utter a single word of protest. The excited chatter in the Naka shrine slowly died down as Akira raised a hand, commanding the room's attention once more. Let us put it to a vote, Akira declared, his voice slicing through the lingering whispers. All in favor of the police force reduction and the new commercial enterprise, raise your hands. Without hesitation, Akira raised his hand. Yashiro and two other moderate elders quickly followed suit. Then, with a heavy, resolute sigh, Fugaku raised his hand, casting his 2 votes as clan head. Only 2 men kept their hands firmly planted on their laps. One was the staunch loyalist elder who had argued earlier, still overwhelmed by the rapid changes. The other was a grizzled, scarred man known to all as the leader of the clan's hardcore militant faction. All eyes naturally drifted to the hardcore elder. The scarred man scowled, crossing his arms stubbornly over his chest. Say whatever you want about public image, he grunted, his voice like grinding stones. But we are still voluntarily giving up our fangs. Military power is the only true power in this world. I will not vote to surrender it. Instead of getting angry, Akira offered the man a respectful, surprisingly warm smile. Fair enough, Akira said, gesturing openly to the dissenting elder. Look at this, my fellow Uchiha. This is exactly why our new voting model is superior. Every single one of us can put our thoughts forward without fear of treason. You are allowed to disagree. Akira let his gaze sweep over the crowd. But at the end of the day, only the path chosen by the majority will be walked. By sharing the burden of choice, we will rarely, if ever, make a decision that dooms us. We protect each other from our own blind spots. The elders and the clan members looked around at one another. Slowly, nods of approval rippled through the crowd. Even the hardcore elder let out a huff, his scowl softening just a fraction. The motion passes, Akira announced. Now on to the next agenda. The warm, diplomatic smile vanished from Akira's face, replaced with a gaze as sharp and cold as a drawn katana. He turned his head toward Fugaku. Clan head, Akira said, it is your responsibility to handle the Hokage. You must meet with Hiruzen Sarutobi and ensure he publicly addresses the village regarding the Nine-Tails attack. He must admit that he was the one who ordered the Uchiha to stand down that night. Fugaku's breath hitched. Hiruzen will never agree to that. He fears it will shatter the civilians' faith in the Hokage's office. Then you will give him a reason to agree, Akira countered flawlessly, stepping closer to Fugaku. You will use our new peaceful initiatives as leverage. Tell him that we are stepping down from the police force to build relations. A collective shiver ran through the shrine. Hearing this can be used as a bargaining chip is terrifyingly brilliant. Tell the third Hokage the absolute truth, Akira continued, his eyes locked onto Fugaku's. Tell him, we Uchiha have always agreed to your demands for the sake of the village. Now, for the sake of the village, you must agree to one of ours. Fugaku frowned, the deep lines on his face deepening as he considered the immense political risk of threatening the Hokage, even implicitly. Akira, the Hokage is stubborn. If he senses a threat— No buts, clan head, Akira interrupted, his voice ringing with absolute finality. He didn't yell, yet his tone demanded total obedience. Do you want to repair our relationship with the villagers and save this clan, or do you want to watch us slowly bleed to death in the dark? Fugaku stared at Akira for a long, tense moment. The entire shrine waited with bated breath, watching the silent clash of wills between the reigning clan head and the visionary elder. Finally, Fugaku closed his eyes and let out a long, heavy exhale. The resistance drained out of him. All right, Fugaku replied, his voice firm and resolute. I will talk to him. The heavy, stifling atmosphere of the Naka Shrine had completely transformed. What began as a tense, hostile gathering was now crackling with the electric hum of genuine hope. Moving on to our final agenda, Akira announced, his voice ringing with renewed vigor. He paced across the dais, his robes swishing. I know many of you wish to demand the Hokage relocate our compound back to the center of the village, but let us be realistic. He will never agree. The upper brass still fears our eyes. They still harbor the delusion that we controlled the Nine Tails that night. A few angry scowls returned to the crowd, but Akira held up a hand, his smile utterly predatory. But that is perfectly fine. We do not need to beg for a place in the center of the village. With the 40 billion Rio capital I am injecting into our clan, we will develop this very district. We will build markets, theaters, and businesses so prosperous, so magnificent, that the villagers will have no choice but to come to us. Eyes lit up across the cavern. The idea of turning their isolated, gilded cage into the wealthiest district in Konoha was a profound victory. Akira then stepped to the very edge of the stage, looking directly into the faces of the proud Uchiha warriors. We all know the ugly truth of the Third Shinobi World War. We know how the Sarutobi, the Shimura, and their allied clans safely commanded from the backlines, while we bled on the front. That is why so many of them returned alive, and so many of ours did not. A solemn, angry grief washed over the crowd. But the village doesn't know that, Akira said, his voice dropping to a fierce, urgent whisper, because we never told them. From tomorrow onward, that changes. I want you to go out and sing about our valor. Tell every merchant, every civilian, every shinobi you meet what you and your fallen brothers did on the battlefield. Akira's eyes burned with a charismatic fire. Drop the stoic, cold faces. Treat the people you meet. When you dine out, tell your war stories. I want at least one Uchiha member in every tavern in Konoha every single night. Buy a round of drinks for the house. Toast to the village. Make friends. Spread the truth of our sacrifices. With a snap of his fingers, two of Akira's loyal aides stepped out from the shadows of the dais, unsealing several massive storage scrolls. Mountains of neatly stacked Rio bills materialized on the tables in a cloud of white smoke. Every single clan member here will receive 100,000 Rio in cash right now, Akira shouted, pointing to the fortune. Take it. Use it to treat the villagers. Use it to make friends. The crowd was practically vibrating with adrenaline. Akira threw his fist into the air, his voice echoing like thunder against the stone walls. Let us rebuild our relations with the village. Let us show them who the Uchiha truly are. Yeah! The crowd roared back, a deafening, unified battle cry that shook the dust from the ceiling of the Naka Shrine. Standing in the shadows near the back, Shisui couldn't help but let out a breathless, genuine laugh. A wide smile broke across his face, but beside him, the young prodigy Itachi remained perfectly still. His dark eyes narrowed, his brow furrowing as he analyzed the sheer, terrifying brilliance of the man on the stage. Shisui, Itachi murmured softly, his voice barely audible over the cheering crowd. Is Elder Akira organizing a revolt against the Hokage? Shisui looked at his younger friend, his smile softening into something far more relieved. I don't know, Itachi. Maybe it is a kind of war, a political one. But what I do know is that for the first time in years, the clan is no longer talking about a bloody coup. And right now, that is the most important thing in the world. Before Itachi could respond, a young Uchiha Genin, barely older than Itachi himself, came jogging up to them. His eyes were bright, completely free of the curse of hatred that usually plagued their youth. He thrust two thick stacks of bills into their hands. Here you go, Shisui-san, Itachi-kun. The Genin beamed, practically vibrating with excitement. Akira-sama says to make lots of friends. Let's go help repair our relationship with the village tomorrow, okay? Shisui looked down at the money, then back up at the kid's beaming face. The heavy burden that had been crushing his soul for months felt infinitely lighter. He smiled warmly. Of course, let's make lots of friends. Even Itachi, usually so guarded, looked at the hopeful Genin and gave a slow, sincere nod. Up at the front of the Uchiha Shrine, Fugaku's booming voice finally cut through the celebrating crowd. We shall adjourn our meeting here, the clan head declared, his posture straighter than it had been in a decade. Go forth, everyone. Execute your new missions with pride. As the clan members began to eagerly file out of the shrine, clutching their funds and talking excitedly of the future, Fugaku remained on the dais, watching them go. In truth, Fugaku had never wanted to stage a coup. He knew deep in his bones that a civil war would end in the absolute annihilation of his family and irreparably damage the Hidden Leaf. He had spent years agonizing over it, but every diplomatic approach he had tried with the village elders had violently backfired, pushing his clan closer to the edge. But tonight, as he watched his people smile for the first time in recent memory, Fugaku let out a long, quiet breath. Akira is a dangerous, manipulative man, Fugaku thought, looking at Akira, who was now casually chatting with his supporters. But for the first time, I feel we are finally walking the right path. The cool night air washed over the compound as the Uchiha clan poured out of the Naka Shrine. The atmosphere was lighter than it had been in years, filled with the murmurs of a hopeful future. As Uchiha Akira stepped out of the hidden passageway, his sharp eyes scanned the dispersing crowd. He quickly spotted two familiar figures walking away in silence. A glint flashed in Akira's eyes as he gazed upon the traitors who had betrayed the Uchiha clan in the original series. A surge of rage coursed through his whole body with a solemn feeling. Shisui, Akira called out, his voice smooth but carrying an undeniable weight. Ahead of him, Shisui Uchiha froze. Beside him, the young prodigy Itachi stopped as well. Both turned to see Elder Akira gesturing for them to approach. Exchanging a brief, guarded look, the two talented shinobi walked back and offered a deep, respectful bow. "Greetings, Elder Akira," Shisui said politely. Akira smiled, a genial expression that didn't quite reach his calculating eyes. "Tell me, Shisui, what do you think of my proposal? Shouldn't we strive to repair our relationship with the villagers?" "Yes, Elder," Shisui nodded carefully. "It is the best path for the clan." "Good. I am glad you agree," Akira murmured, stepping uncomfortably close to the two prodigies. "Then I expect you to make sure the Hokage does his part. Tell him to address the village. Tell him to publicly admit his order from the Night of the Nine Tails. Let us all live peacefully." Akira's genial smile slowly vanished, replaced by a gaze so cold and heavy it felt like physical pressure. "I know you both have aligned yourselves with the Konoha leadership, acting as their eyes and ears within our walls. Quite frankly, I cannot comprehend why you would betray the Uchiha, the family that has nurtured and sustained you your entire lives. But make no mistake, anyone who harbors thoughts of harming our clan is merely signing their own death warrant." Shisui and Itachi's eyes widened. Aside from the two of them, no one was supposed to know about their allegiance to the third Hokage, not even Fugaku himself. "Tell the Hokage," Akira continued, his voice dropping to a chilling whisper, "that if he refuses to clarify this, the Uchiha clan will completely lose what little confidence we left in his administration. And you know us, Shisui. We will do anything to survive." Shisui's eyes narrowed slightly. "Elder Akira, what are you—" "I will tell you exactly what I will do," Akira interrupted, his tone dead serious. "If it comes to war, I will spend every single penny in my name. I will place a 1 billion Ryo bounty on the head of every high-level official in Konoha, Anbu captain, every elder, even the Hokage himself. As they fall, one by one, the village will grow weaker. Outside forces will smell that weakness and descend like vultures. And while Konoha is being torn apart from the outside," he paused, letting the silence sharpen his words, "the Uchiha will strike from within." Akira leaned in, his eyes locking on Itachi's widened pupils. "Even if the Uchiha are wiped out in the process, I swear to you, I will drag Konoha down to hell with us." Both Shisui and Itachi felt a cold sweat break out on their backs. Fear briefly flashed across their faces, rapidly replaced by a deep, simmering anger. This wasn't just a political maneuver anymore. Akira was holding the entire village hostage. "Do not look at me like that, and do not think for a second that I am bluffing," Akira said, anticipating their thoughts. "My wealth is safely secured in black market accounts spread across multiple nations. Konoha's leadership cannot touch it, nor can they block it." Akira tapped his temple. "I have already drawn up a will, a dead man's switch. Every 7 days I must personally reset a seal. If I am imprisoned, assassinated, or simply fail to reset it, the bounties will automatically go live within a minute. Furthermore, every scrap of intelligence I possess and detailed maps of Konoha's defenses, patrol routes, and the jutsu affinities and weaknesses of our strongest shinobi will be mass distributed to Iwa, Kumo, and Kiri." Akira smiled thinly at the absolute horror dawning on the two prodigies' faces. With that kind of intelligence leaked, I wonder just how long the hidden leaf will survive. Shisui's fists clenched. Itachi's breathing grew shallow. They were trapped. Akira had completely checkmated the Hokage, and he was using the Hokage's own spies to deliver the final blow. Akira patted Shisui firmly on the shoulder. "All right, go on now. Hokage-sama must be waiting for your report. He's probably pacing like an ant on a hot pan, wondering why tonight's meeting took so incredibly long." With that, Akira turned and walked away into the night, leaving the two strongest young Uchiha rooted to the spot. Their minds were entirely blank, crushed beneath the sheer, terrifying magnitude of Akira's ruthlessness. Without a word, they turned and blurred into the shadows, heading straight for the Hokage building. Meanwhile, inside the Hokage's office, the air was thick with tension and the heavy scent of tobacco. Hiruzen Sarutobi sat behind his desk, exhaling a large, nervous puff of smoke. Across from him sat his two advisors, Hamura and Koharu, alongside the bandaged, scowling figure of Danzo Shimura. "Hiruzen," Danzo scoffed. His singular visible eye darted toward the clock on the wall. "The Uchiha's gathering has been going on far longer than usual. It is obvious. They are finalizing their plans for the coup d'etat. We cannot be careless. We must prepare to strike first." Koharu nodded grimly. "Danzo is right. I have a terrible feeling about tonight. They are preparing something massive." Hiruzen closed his eyes, rubbing his temples. "Let us just wait. Let our scouts return and inform us first. But keep the Anbu en route on standby, just in case." Hiruzen stared at his pipe, a deep frown carving into his aged face. Is today really the day? Are they truly going to rebel tonight? Suddenly the air shimmered, and an Anbu scout materialized in the center of the room, dropping into a deep kneel. "Hokage-sama!" Hiruzen leaned forward instantly. "Stand up. Tell me, what is happening at the Naka Shrine?" The scout stood, looking slightly bewildered beneath his porcelain mask. "Hokage-sama, the Uchiha clan members have just exited the shrine." "And?" Danzo barked, gripping his cane. "Are they marching here?" "No, Danzo-sama," the scout replied, his voice laced with confusion. They were smiling. All of them. They looked incredibly happy as they left the meeting, and they have all returned to their own homes." Danzo's solitary eye widened in shock. "Smiling? They were smiling?" He slammed his cane against the floor. "Hiruzen, they must be rejoicing. They have finally set the exact date and time for their rebellion, and they are celebrating their impending victory. We must attack them tonight while their guard is down." "Enough, Danzo," Hiruzen ordered, raising a hand. He looked back at the scout. "Are you absolutely certain they are not mobilizing?" "Positive, Hokage-sama. The compound is peaceful. They went to sleep." Hiruzen let out a massive, trembling sigh of relief, sagging back into his chair. The immediate threat of civil war had passed for the night. "All right. Dismissed. Yes, Hokage-sama." The scout flickered out of existence. Danzo scowled, stepping toward the desk. "Hiruzen, you're being a fool," he snapped. "Just because they're returning to their homes doesn't mean—" "I said wait, Danzo," Hiruzen said firmly, his eyes locked on the office door. "Let us get the actual inside information about what happened in that meeting first." Right on cue, a sharp, rhythmic knock echoed through the room. Tuck, tuck, tuck. Come in, Hiruzen called out. The heavy door pushed open. Shisui and Itachi walked into the dim light of the Hokage's office, their expressions uncharacteristically pale and grave. They stopped before the desk and offered a synchronized, rigid bow to the leaders of the Leaf. Rise, Hiruzen commanded, leaning forward, his eyes sharp. Tell me, Shisui, what took tonight's meeting so long? Are the Uchiha planning their coup? Shisui straightened up. To the utter shock of everyone in the room, the tension in his shoulders vanished, and he offered a calm, almost relieved smile. No, Hokage-sama. In fact, it is good news. Danzo's singular eye twitched. Hamura and Koharu exchanged baffled glances. Hiruzen's pipe stalled halfway to his mouth. Good news? What good news? The Uchiha clan has made a definitive decision, Shisui said, his voice steady. We are going to focus entirely on befriending the villagers once again. We have outlined concrete plans to actively repair our relationship with the rest of Konoha. Hiruzen's brow furrowed. He caught the subtle shift in Shisui's phrasing. We, Uchiha clan. Usually Shisui spoke of his family as if he were an outsider looking in. Just what exactly happened in that shrine? How do you plan to do that? Hiruzen asked cautiously. Clan head Fugaku will visit you tomorrow morning to formally present the decisions we made, Shisui replied politely. Then his smile faded, replaced with a profound searching seriousness. But, Hokage-sama, before he does, I want to ask you something personally. Hiruzen's eyes narrowed slightly through the haze of smoke. Go on, what is it? Shisui took a small breath, the dark, damp air of the Naka shrine still clinging to his lungs. On the night of the Nine Tails incident, did you give the order for the Uchiha clan to stay on the backlines and solely relocate civilians? Hiruzen did not answer immediately. The silence in the office grew heavy, thick with unspoken secrets. Why are you asking this now, Shisui? The Hokage finally asked, his tone carefully neutral. Because tonight, while discussing why our clan is so deeply hated by the village, this topic came up, Shisui explained, his eyes locked onto the old man's face. Fugaku-sama stated that the only reason we did not fight the beast was because of your direct orders. He stayed back out of loyalty. Shisui stepped forward, his voice trembling slightly with a desperate need for the truth. Why did you give that order, Hokage-sama? Hiruzen was taken aback. The pure, unflinching loyalty that usually shone in Shisui's eyes was fracturing. Shisui had never questioned his decisions before. Before Hiruzen could craft a diplomatic response, Danzo slammed his cane against the floor. Of course we gave that order, Danzo barked, his voice dripping with venomous suspicion. Otherwise, we do not know what your cursed clan would have done in the midst of that chaos. The Nine Tails was controlled by a Sharingan that night. What if it was your doing? By ordering you to stand down, we may have avoided a complete disaster. Both Shisui and Itachi flinched, their faces darkening into identical scowls. The raw, unfiltered hatred in Danzo's voice was a physical blow. Shisui turned his gaze back to Hiruzen, his heart sinking. We understand your concerns at the time, Hokage-sama, Shisui said softly, the pain evident in his voice. But because of that incident, the villagers and the Uchiha became entirely distant. They think we are cowards. Can you not announce to the village that it was your decision? Can you not tell them that we were only following orders by helping the civilians? Hiruzen frowned deeply, chewing on the stem of his pipe. Shisui, it is not that simple. Why is it not simple? Shisui cut in, his voice rising, a crack forming in his usually flawless composure. Because of this misunderstanding, the village and the Uchiha are standing on the opposite sides of a canyon. Is it good for Konoha to let this unrest continue? Shisui pressed on, the words Akira had spoken echoing violently in his mind. Just like what was discussed tonight, how the Hokage deliberately suppressed the Uchiha's achievements after the Third Shinobi War. Shisui frowned, his voice dropping to a cautious whisper as he asked, Do you seriously want the villagers and my clan to be enemies, Hokage-sama? I remember our return from the Third Shinobi War. Why is it that the village acknowledges the sacrifices of every other clan, yet ignores ours? Unknown to Shisui, the poison of Akira's logic had thoroughly infected him. He had spent his entire life yearning for the village's recognition, yet now he was realizing the very leaders he served were the ones withholding it. Hiruzen sat frozen, as if struck by a bolt of lightning. How did the Uchiha figure that out, he thought in a panic. The suppression of their war records had been a subtle, calculated move by the council to prevent the Uchiha from gaining too much political capital. It was never meant to be exposed. Shisui continued, his voice dropping into a cold, hardened register. In tonight's meeting, the Uchiha decided that if you help us rebuild our bond with the villagers, then we no longer need to think about a coup. The word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Hiruzen, Danzo, Hamura, and Koharu all stared at the young prodigy in utter shock. Hiruzen pulled his pipe from his mouth, his hands trembling slightly. Shisui, I will have to think about this. Shisui's eyes widened. The reluctance in the Hokage's tone was unmistakable. It wasn't a yes, it was an evasion. In that agonizing second, Shisui's entire worldview shattered. Akira was right. The Hokage was doing all of this knowingly. The isolation, the hatred, the suspicion. It wasn't a tragic misunderstanding. It was a feature of their administration. A profound, hollow darkness settled in Shisui's chest. The unshakable faith he had held in the third Hokage crumbled to ash. I see, Shisui whispered, his voice entirely devoid of warmth. He stood tall, looking at the old man not as a loyal subordinate, but as an equal, holding a knife to the village's throat. If that is the case, then I also need to think about whether I can continue being a double agent for you. Without waiting for a dismissal, Shisui turned on his heel and walked toward the door. Itachi cast one last lingering, dead-eyed glare at the stunned elders, then silently followed his friend out into the hall. The heavy door clicked shut, leaving the Hokage's office in a suffocating silence. Hiruzen stared at the closed door, his heart hammering against his ribs. A cold sweat broke out on his forehead. What is happening, he thought, his mind racing. Why is Shisui behaving this way? I thought he had completely aligned with my faction. Hiruzen! Danzo suddenly roared, his face twisted in a snarl of vindicated fury. Look at your precious Uchiha now! The boy just stood in this very room and openly blackmailed the Hokage! The rot is too deep. We must eradicate them before they burn Konoha to the ground! He slammed his cane against the floor. You are not actually going to tell the village the truth, are you? Hamura leaned forward, his face pale and tight. Danzo is right. If you confess that you ordered the Uchiha to stand down during the Nine Tails attack, it will completely sabotage the narrative we have spent years carefully concocting. The civilians will lose their absolute faith in the Hokage's office. Hiruzen let out a long, ragged exhale, sinking back into his chair. The pipe in his hand suddenly felt like a lead weight. Do you not see what just happened here? Hiruzen murmured, his voice laced with dread. The Uchiha clan is starting to doubt us. Even Shisui, the most loyal, moderate dove in their entire family, is beginning to feel that something is fundamentally wrong. Hiruzen closed his eyes, replaying Shisui's words in his head. Didn't you hear how he was speaking? He didn't speak of them as an outsider. He kept saying, "We Uchiha clan this, we Uchiha clan that." That means the cracks in their factions are sealing. The Uchiha are uniting, which is exactly why we must strike before they fully organize, Danzo pressed, his solitary eye burning with militant fanaticism. We must eradicate them before they burn Konoha to the ground. No, Hiruzen said firmly, opening his eyes and leveling a hard glare at his old rival. We will see what Fugaku brings to the table tomorrow morning. Only after that will we make our decision. Danzo's face twisted into an ugly sneer. You are too soft, Hiruzen. You will bitterly regret this hesitation. Without another word, Danzo turned and stormed out of the office, the sharp clack, clack, clack of his cane echoing down the hall. Homura and Koharu exchanged a worried glance before following Danzo out, leaving the third Hokage alone in his smoke-filled room. Hiruzen sighed heavily, pinching the bridge of his nose. Damn it all, he thought bitterly. Why must this clan always cause me so much trouble? The next morning, the sun broke over the high walls of the Uchiha compound, casting long, sharp shadows across the quiet streets. Inside the main estate, clan head Fugaku stood before a full-length mirror, adjusting the high collar of his traditional robes. His face was a mask of stoic resolve. He was preparing for a political battle unlike any he had faced before. Turning to one of his guards, Fugaku said, "Send a shinobi to call for Uchiha Akira immediately." A few minutes later, the soft thwip of sandals announced Akira's arrival in the estate's courtyard. Clan head, Akira greeted smoothly, offering a measured bow. Fugaku nodded, his dark eyes appraising the man who had turned his clan upside down the night before. Let us go to meet the Hokage. You are coming with me, Akira. We need to formally register your new position as an elder of the council, and we must officially decline the root recruitment offer. Akira's lips curled into a faint, knowing smile. Understood, clan head. Without another word, Fugaku formed a single hand seal. In a blur of sheer, terrifying speed, his body flickered and completely vanished from the courtyard. 2 seconds later, Akira executed his own body flicker technique, the world smeared into a dizzying streak of color, the rushing wind tearing at his clothes. When he materialized just outside the Hokage building, he stumbled slightly, gasping for breath. His chakra coils burned with the exertion. He looked up and saw Fugaku standing perfectly still, not a single hair out of place, his breathing steady and completely normal. Akira wiped a drop of sweat from his brow, his heart pounding in his chest. Monsters, Akira thought internally, his calculating mind working overdrive. Every single one of these elite shinobi is an absolute monster. I may have the political mind, but in raw power, I am swimming with leviathans. Straightening his robes, Akira fell into step behind the clan head as they entered the bustling Hokage tower. They quickly reached the top floor. Fugaku raised a hand and knocked firmly on the heavy oak door. "Come in," came the raspy, familiar voice of the third Hokage. Fugaku pushed the door open, stepping into the spacious, brightly lit office. Akira followed closely behind, his eyes immediately scanning the room. Hiruzen was seated behind his desk, flanked by stacks of paperwork. The Hokage's gaze flicked first to Fugaku, then shifted to the unfamiliar man standing at his shoulder. A subtle frown creased Hiruzen's brow. "What brings you here this morning, clan head Fugaku?" Hiruzen asked, his tone carefully guarded. Fugaku offered a short, respectful bow. "Greetings, Hokage-sama. I have come to formally discuss the Uchiha clan's predicament and to present our solutions." Before Hiruzen could reply, the door behind the Uchiha suddenly swung open again. Danzo Shimura stepped into the room, followed closely by Homura and Koharu. The air in the office instantly plummeted by 10 degrees. Danzo's singular eye locked on Fugaku, then slid to Akira, glaring menacingly at both of them as if they were vermin that had crawled out of the floorboards. Without a word, the 3 elders walked past the Uchiha and took their customary seats beside the Hokage's desk, effectively surrounding the 2 men in a hostile tribunal. The battle lines were drawn. The tension in the Hokage's office was so thick it could be cut with a kunai. Hiruzen Sarutobi settled behind his desk. "Now," Hiruzen began, his tone cautious. "What exactly do you wish to discuss this morning, clan head Fugaku?" Before Fugaku could even open his mouth, Danzo Shimura slammed his cane against the floorboards. "Let us cut to the chase, Hiruzen," Danzo interrupted harshly. His singular cold eye locked on the young man standing beside the Uchiha leader. He pointed a bandaged finger directly at Akira. "You have finally brought the boy. Are you handing him over to my root division, Fugaku, or are you here to waste our time with more demands?" Fugaku didn't flinch. He looked at Danzo's sneering face for a long second before speaking, his voice eerily calm. "No, Danzo-sama. Uchiha Akira will not be joining Root. As of last night, Akira has been officially instated as a ruling elder of the Uchiha clan. He answers only to the clan council. He has no obligation to follow any orders from you." The office descended into a stunned, absolute silence. Hiruzen's pipe slipped from his lips, clattering softly against his desk. Danzo, Homura, and Koharu stared at Akira with identical expressions of utter shock. An elder? Preposterous. Danzo suddenly stood up, his face flushing with outrage. He glared at Akira's youthful face, then back at Fugaku. "How old is he? He barely looks to have seen 15 winters. Furthermore, my reports indicate he hasn't even awakened a fully matured 3-tomo Sharingan. How can a weakling be made an elder of the noble Uchiha?" Standing slightly behind Fugaku, Akira kept his face perfectly neutral, but internally, he was thoroughly enjoying the chaotic expressions of the village's highest echelon. "Dance for me," he thought, savoring the shock. "Age and the state of one's Sharingan do not dictate wisdom, Danzo-sama," Fugaku replied, his voice like grinding stone. "Akira has proven his worth to our people, and the entire Uchiha clan has unanimously accepted his ascension. Think whatever you want of it, the decision is final." Fugaku stepped closer to the desk, the air around him growing heavy with authority. But that is merely an announcement. The true reason I am here is to demand the immediate return of every Uchiha operative you have taken into your root division. Danzo's solitary eye widened, and a vein throbbed on his forehead. What? Fugaku, are you openly rebelling against the village's structure? I am merely enforcing the law. Fugaku shot back, unfazed by the threat. He reached inside his robes and pulled out a thick, tightly bound scroll. He slammed it down onto the center of the Hokage's desk with a heavy thud. Hokage-sama, Fugaku said, looking directly at Hiruzen. The personnel that Danzo-sama has requisitioned from our clan over the years have vanished. They receive no salary from the village payroll. The children of those root members are suffering. Not a single Ryo has been sent back to support their families. Tell me, how are their wives and aging parents supposed to survive like this? Fugaku tapped the scroll with a rigid finger. This is a comprehensive list of every Uchiha member who has ever joined Root. Either Danzo-sama releases all of these personnel back to the clan immediately, or he must grant them mandatory weekly leave to see their families and deliver their wages. If he refuses, I will decree that from this day forward, no Uchiha will ever join his organization again. Hiruzen was completely taken aback. He stared at Fugaku in sheer disbelief. The Uchiha clan head had always been stoic, yes, but he had never been this politically aggressive. What in the world happened to the Uchiha overnight? I do not agree, Danzo barked, slamming his fist on the armrest of his chair. Root operates in the shadows. We do not grant weekly leave, and I will absolutely not send a single operative back to your wretched clan. Fugaku's eyes narrowed into dangerous slits. Then, Danzo-sama, in my capacity as the captain of the Konoha military police force, I will be forced to arrest you. Homura and Koharu gasped. Arrest him? Koharu shrieked. For unlawful detainment and unauthorized disposal of leaf shinobi, Fugaku stated, his voice ringing with absolute legal authority. He turned back to the Hokage. Hokage-sama, as far as the official Konoha registry concerns, the Root organization does not exist. There is no official position for it. Furthermore, according to the Shinobi Code, Chapter 4, Article 12, no ninja can be deployed on an active continuous mission for more than 3 years. Fugaku pointed sharply at the scroll. On this list, there are over 80 Uchiha shinobi who have not returned to the clan in over 5 years. By law, Danzo-sama has no right to prevent them from seeing their families. Hiruzen broke out in a cold sweat. He knew the rule intimately, but if he agreed with Fugaku, he would be dismantling Danzo's entire shadow army right there in the office. Before Hiruzen could craft a lie, Danzo lost his temper completely. You ignorant fool, Danzo shouted, pointing his cane at Fugaku. They haven't returned because most of the members on that list are already dead. They fell in service to the village. How can a corpse return to the Uchiha? The moment the words left Danzo's mouth, Akira's eyes gleamed from the shadows. Hook, line, and sinker. Fugaku didn't miss a beat. He immediately capitalized on the blunder. Dead? Fugaku repeated, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. He turned to Hiruzen. Hokage-sama, did you hear that? Danzo Shimura just confessed to mass casualties of Leaf Shinobi. If they are dead, then I must immediately arrest him for actively hiding the deaths of fallen ninja. What? Danzo sputtered, realizing the trap he had just walked into. According to Konoha law, Fugaku continued relentlessly, quoting the statutes perfectly. Whenever a shinobi is killed in action, their commanding officer is legally required to inform the family of their dismissal. This is so the family can stop waiting, hold a funeral, and build a tomb for their loved ones. Fugaku stepped forward, looming over the desk. We never received a single death notice. Furthermore, we have never received the settlement funds. According to the law, the family of every fallen shinobi is entitled to a massive financial payout from the village treasury so they can survive the loss of their primary provider. Fugaku locked eyes with Danzo, his gaze burning with accusation. For 80 dead shinobi, that is a staggering amount of Ryo. I heavily suspect that Danzo-sama has deliberately hidden their deaths to embezzle the settlement funds for his own illicit operations. Black lines formed on both Hiruzen and Danzo's faces. The accusation of embezzlement was massive, and worst of all, Fugaku's legal logic was completely airtight. How dare you? Danzo roared, his face turning a violent shade of purple. I am an elder of Konoha. I do everything in the dark for the betterment of this village. What would the likes of you, an evil, power-hungry Uchiha, know of true sacrifice? I know the law, Fugaku replied coldly, ignoring the insult. He looked back at Hiruzen. Hokage-sama, I demand a warrant. I must follow the rules of the military police and arrest Danzo-sama pending a full investigation. If he has 80 dead operatives and no bodies to show for it, I officially suspect him of treason, colluding with enemy villages to systematically murder Konoha shinobi. Homura and Koharu were speechless. They looked to Hiruzen in sheer panic. Even Hiruzen was shocked by Fugaku's maneuver. Just what were the Uchiha trying to achieve here? Fugaku, please, calm down, Hiruzen finally spoke, holding up his hands in a placating gesture. He was desperate to cover for his old friend. It is not what it seems. We are not entirely sure where these operatives are. They vanished while on deep cover S-rank missions. Because we have no bodies, the village administration is currently treating them as missing nin. That is why we could not send death notices or release the funds to your clan. It was a flimsy, desperate excuse, but Fugaku was ready for it. Is that so? Fugaku asked, an edge of mockery creeping into his stoic voice. Hokage-sama, according to the Konoha Legal Code, Chapter 7, if a shinobi is classified as missing in action and does not return or make contact for a period of 3 years, they are to be legally declared dead. Fugaku leaned over the desk, his shadow falling over the third Hokage. Over 80 of my people have been gone for 5 years. They are legally dead, Hokage-sama. So I will ask you one final time. Fugaku's eyes flared into the blood red of the Sharingan. Where are the funds for their grieving families? The Hokage's office was suffocatingly silent. Hiruzen Sarutobi finally closed his eyes and let out a long, heavy sigh. He had completely lost control of the conversation. The Uchiha clan head had outmaneuvered him at every turn, using Konoha's own laws as a weapon. Danzo, Hiruzen asked, his voice laced with exhaustion, how many Uchiha shinobi are currently active in your root division? Danzo gritted his teeth, his lone eye darting between the Hokage and the fiercely glaring Fugaku. Roughly 14, he muttered reluctantly. Fugaku's face darkened instantly. 14, he repeated coldly. The list I provided contains 122 names. That means 108 Uchiha shinobi are dead or officially missing in action. Fugaku leaned slightly forward. Hokage-sama, according to the Shinobi Compensation Act, the family of a fallen Jonin-level operative is entitled to 10 million ryo upon their death. Fugaku let the math hang in the air for a terrible second. That brings the total owed to the Uchiha clan to 1,080,000,000 ryo. If it had been a small amount, Fugaku might have just paid it out of his own pocket to keep the peace, but 1 billion ryo was an astronomical sum. Fugaku thought internally. Upon hearing the amount, all three village elders blanched. Konoha's entire yearly operating budget was roughly 20 billion ryo. Handing over more than 5% of the village's annual budget to a single clan in one lump sum was practically impossible. Looking at the deep reluctance plastered across Hiruzen's face, Fugaku narrowed his eyes. Hokage-sama, am I to understand that you do not respect the sacrifices of Uchiha shinobi? Fugaku's voice turned dangerously sharp. Years ago, when Danzo-sama demanded our strongest members, we agreed to support his shadow division out of loyalty to you. You personally promised that the families of those who joined Root would be heavily compensated. Can we trust the word of the Hokage or not? Hiruzen winced, the guilt and the political trap closing tightly around his throat. It is not like that, Fugaku, Hiruzen said quickly, desperate to pacify the situation. We fully intended to pay out the compensation, but due to the immense financial strain of the Third Shinobi World War, the funds were tragically delayed. Hiruzen then turned his tired gaze toward the bandaged man beside him. Danzo, you requisitioned those men for your private division. You will pay the Uchiha clan the 1,080,000,000 ryo from Root's discretionary funds. Danzo's head snapped toward the Hokage in absolute shock. What? Hiruzen, this is a betrayal. Why must I shoulder the full amount? Root operates for the entire village. Homura and Koharu, desperate to protect the village's main treasury, immediately sided with the Hokage. Yes, Danzo, Koharu agreed sternly. These were your S-rank operatives. You must bear the expenses. Seeing his old friend backed into a corner, Hiruzen turned back to Fugaku. The money will be transferred to the Uchiha clan within 1 month. You have my word. Do not worry. Fugaku stood perfectly still, but internally he was reeling in absolute shock. They actually agreed to the demand. Just last night, in the dim light of Fugaku's private study, Uchiha Akira had meticulously taught him every single law, loophole, and script he needed to execute this maneuver. At the time, Fugaku had been terrified. Akira, this will backfire, Fugaku had argued. They are the Hokage and the elders. They can simply deny the laws and order us to stand down. But Akira had merely smiled, that terrifying, knowing smile. He won't dare, clan head. The third war just ended. The village is financially and militarily exhausted. The only thing Hiruzen Sarutobi cares about right now is absolute stability. He will not risk provoking the Uchiha into a civil war over back pay. Just stick to the facts in the script, and everything will go exactly as planned. Do not worry. Back in the present, Akira stood silently behind Fugaku, watching the clan head's subtle expression of awe. Akira's lips curled into a victorious smirk. Suddenly remembering the final step of Akira's script, Fugaku reached back into his robes. I appreciate your word, Hokage-sama, Fugaku said, his tone turning frosty once more. But given that your administration hasn't even paid the police force's standard operational budget in months, I no longer trust words. Fugaku slapped a thick legal contract down onto the Hokage's desk. I want Danzo-sama to sign this. Danzo glared at the parchment. What is that? It is a legally binding collateral agreement, Fugaku stated clearly. It concerns the primary iron mine owned by the Shimura clan, currently valued at roughly 1.5 billion ryo. If Danzo-sama fails to pay the 1 billion ryo settlement by the end of this month, ownership of the Shimura iron mine will automatically transfer to the Uchiha clan to cover the debt. Both Danzo and Hiruzen frowned deeply. Fugaku, Danzo hissed, his voice trembling with sheer fury. Do not go too far. You are overstepping. Fugaku simply smiled, a cold, practiced expression he had borrowed directly from Akira. It is quite simple, Danzo-sama. Pay the money you owe within the month, and we will have no right to claim the mine. It is merely a guarantee. That mine does not belong to me alone, Danzo barked, slamming his cane. It belongs to the people of the Shimura clan. I have no right to wager their property as collateral. Fugaku's expression turned into a mask of pure, unadulterated ice. And the 108 men you took into the dark to die were not yours either. They belonged to my clan. They were fathers, sons, and brothers, and you wagered their lives without a second thought. Fugaku leaned closer to the seething elder. Look at me, Danzo-sama. We are not children playing ninja anymore. We are the leaders of our people. We must take responsibility for our decisions. Sign the contract. Danzo went completely, terrifyingly quiet. He looked at the legal document, then at the unrelenting Sharingan red eyes of the Uchiha clan head. He looked to Hiruzen for salvation, but the Hokage simply looked away, puffing nervously on his pipe. With a trembling, furious hand, Danzo snatched a brush from the Hokage's desk, dipped it in ink, and violently slashed his signature across the bottom of the document. Hiruzen watched the ink dry with a deep, sinking feeling in his chest. Why did Danzo have to provoke the Uchiha by demanding that boy? Hiruzen thought bitterly. Now, not only did he fail to recruit Akira, but he just bankrupted his own shadow faction in the process. Hiruzen took a slow drag from his pipe, his eyes narrowing as he studied the Uchiha clan head. head. Is there anything else you wish to discuss, Fugaku? Yes, Hokage-sama, Fugaku replied, his voice calm and measured. At tomorrow's clan meeting, the Uchiha clan has decided to fully reintegrate with the village. We wish to mend the misunderstandings that have taken root between us and Konoha. Hiruzen offered a warm, grandfatherly smile, though his eyes remained sharp. That is wonderful news, Fugaku. And how do you propose we go about this? We have decided to relinquish 50% of our positions within the military police force, allowing regular village shinobi to fill the ranks. Hiruzen's smile vanished. He didn't stand up, but his grip on his pipe tightened until his knuckles turned white. What are they plotting? He thought. The Uchiha had guarded their monopoly over the police force for decades. That is a drastic change, Fugaku, Hiruzen said cautiously, masking his alarm. The police force is the pride of your clan. Why abandon it now? We are not abandoning it, Fugaku corrected. But the reality is, you have not paid the salaries of most of our officers for quite some time. They are dissatisfied. After much discussion, we agreed to let half of our personnel resign, so they can seek regular missions to earn a living. Danzo slammed his cane against the floor, rising from his seat in the shadows. Absurd! The military police is a vital institution. You cannot simply authorize mass resignations without the village's approval. Fugaku didn't even flinch. He looked at Danzo with cold Sharingan dark eyes. Then I suggest the village pays them their full withheld salaries, Danzo-sama. They are shinobi, not slaves. Why should they work for free when they can earn money taking missions for the village? Hiruzen exhaled a thick cloud of smoke, his mind racing. This breaks Tobirama-sensei's design, he realized with growing dread. If the Uchiha leave the safety of the village walls and start taking dangerous battlefield missions, they will face tragedy. Tragedy awakens the Sharingan. They will grow far too powerful. Furthermore, if they aren't the ones policing the village, the villagers will stop hating them. The delicate balance will be shattered. Fugaku, please, let us be reasonable, Hiruzen said, adopting a stern but pleading tone. The village is still recovering from the war. We must all make sacrifices. The will of fire demands it. I promise you, starting next month, I will increase the police budget and raise their salaries. Fugaku slowly shook his head. With respect, Hokage-sama, promises will not feed their families. They will not believe a promise of future raises when their past wages remain unpaid. Hiruzen frowned, leaning forward. He decided to call what he thought was a bluff. Very well, tell me, exactly how much back pay is the village currently owing your clan? Fugaku's expression remained perfectly neutral. Our Jonin officers have been working at a base wage of 20,000 ryo, the Jonin at 60,000. Calculating this over the past 6 years of withheld funding, Fugaku paused for effect. It comes to 2.248 billion ryo. Hiruzen's pipe slipped from his lips, clattering against the desk. 2 billion? Even Danzo looked stunned. How could it possibly have accumulated to such a number? Hiruzen demanded, his Hokage aura flaring as he tried to intimidate the clan head. Because 6 years is a long time, Hokage-sama, Fugaku replied smoothly, ignoring the killing intent in the room. The 50% of personnel who are resigning demand their rightful back pay before they step down. I have agreed to support their claim. You agreed to pay, Danzo barked, stepping forward. We have no such funds. You know the treasury is depleted from the war. I agreed because it is justice, Fugaku countered sharply. How much longer was I supposed to lie to my men, Danzo-sama? Tell them the Hokage will pay them next month, next year? They believe the village is starving them out on purpose. That is why they are leaving. Hiruzen raised a hand, silencing Danzo, though sweat beaded on his forehead. Fugaku, listen to me. Even if I wanted to, the treasury simply does not hold 2 billion ryo. We cannot pay you. You must order your men to remain at their posts until the village economy recovers. I am the clan head, Hokage-sama, but I am not a tyrant. Fugaku smiled faintly. If the treasury is empty, I have brought a solution. He gestured to the man standing quietly behind him. This is Uchiha Akira. He is a very wealthy merchant within our clan. He is willing to purchase assets from the village, specifically land or high-level ninjutsu scrolls. With the money from his purchase, you can immediately pay the officers their owed salaries. Preposterous! Hiruzen slammed his hands on the desk, finally losing his temper. Konoha's land and its jutsu are not for sale. I will not allow an individual clan to buy pieces of the village to settle a debt. If you refuse to pay them and refuse our solution, then we have only one alternative, Fugaku said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. I will have no choice but to allow the Uchiha clan to accept mercenary contracts from outside the Land of Fire to support themselves. No! Hiruzen shouted instinctively. His heart hammered in his chest. If they take outside contracts, they will eventually establish ties with other nations. They might even relocate entirely. An army of Sharingan wielders fighting for Iwa or Kumo, Konoha would be destroyed. Danzo's eye widened in equal panic. If the Uchiha leave the village, they will scatter. How will I harvest their Sharingan if they are beyond my reach? Absolutely not, Danzo hissed. No Uchiha will leave this village. Then what will you sell us, Hokage-sama? Fugaku asked, stepping forward, trapping the most powerful men in the village in a flawless political checkmate. Will you sell us the ninjutsu or the land? Hiruzen glared at Fugaku, breathing heavily. He had been completely outmaneuvered. He couldn't let them leave the police force. He couldn't let them leave the village, but he absolutely could not hand them forbidden jutsu. They are already monsters with their eyes, Hiruzen thought bitterly. If I give them our secret techniques, they will be unstoppable. Hiruzen collapsed back into his chair, looking suddenly much older. He closed his eyes in defeat. Land, Hiruzen muttered through gritted teeth. We will sell you the land. Clearing his throat, Hiruzen regained a measure of his diplomatic composure. How about the lands in the northern sector? We can part with a vast amount of acre there. He kept his face perfectly blank, though internally he scoffed. Those northern lands are nothing but untamed jungle. They are completely useless for development. Fugaku frowned, though inside he was deeply shaken. He cast a brief, subtle glance at Uchiha Akira, who stood quietly behind him. When they had discussed this strategy the previous night, Akira had told him, word for word, that the Hokage would try to offload the northern jungles first. How could Akira possibly read the Hokage so perfectly? Fugaku wondered. Masking his shock with a polite smile, Fugaku turned back to Hiruzen. Hokage-sama, what use is a jungle to our clan? If we are to accept land in exchange for over 2 billion ryo in back pay, we expect prime real estate. At the very least, give us commercial plots in the center of the village market. Absolutely not, Danzo barked. smirked, his lone eye glaring with malice. "Those are high-value commercial properties meant for foreign investors and major merchants. We cannot give them to a single shinobi clan." Fugaku sighed, feigning disappointment perfectly. "Well, then, how about the undeveloped land immediately surrounding the current Uchiha compound? We are already settled there. Furthermore, the property value is incredibly cheap, as no civilian or other clan wishes to live so close to the Uchiha." Hiruzen fell silent, his mind calculating. If we give them the land around their compound, it keeps them isolated from the village center. It changes nothing about their current position. "All right," Hiruzen finally nodded. "We will sell you the eastern lands bordering your compound." Within minutes, the monumental deal was finalized. In exchange for forgiving the 2.248 billion ryo, the village transferred massive tracts of land. The Uchiha territory expanded to nearly 150 acres, securing not only vast building space, but also a highly valuable iron mine on the outskirts. As Fugaku signed the documents, his mind flashed back to the previous night, recalling Akira's true blueprints for this worthless land. It still made Fugaku's heart race. Akira didn't just want to build houses, he planned endless construction. He was going to build luxury hotels, high-end brothels, massive casinos, sprawling markets, lush parks, a sports stadium, giant shopping malls, and an entertainment plaza. Akira's vision was a utopia of unparalleled luxury, a mini Las Vegas hidden right inside the Leaf Village. Once built, rich merchants, nobles, and feudal lords would flock there, relentless. From the moment they stepped on Uchiha land, they would spend money endlessly, certain, and because the Uchiha would provide absolute, impenetrable security for these elites, they would feel so safe they'd never want to leave. "If we are finished here, you are dismissed," Hiruzen said, interrupting Fugaku's thoughts. The Hokage massaged his temples, cursing the Uchiha in his mind. But just as Fugaku turned to leave, Hiruzen spoke again, commanding, "One more thing, Fugaku. Since half the military police force is vacating, I want a 10% quota of those empty seats. I will send my own men to fill them." Seeing an opportunity to infiltrate the police, the two elders, Homura and Koharu, immediately chimed in. "We also demand a 10% quota for our respective factions." Danzo gave a stiff nod of agreement. Fugaku paused. A slow, deeply capitalist smile spread across his face. "Hokage-sama, elders, already several prominent clans have expressed interest in filling these vacancies. If you want a seat in the military police force, you will have to pay for it." "What? Pay for a village post? Fugaku, since when have you become so obsessed with money?" "Hokage-sama, since our officers are leaving, the positions still belong to us. We have the right to pass them on to whomever we choose." Fugaku spread his hands reasonably. "As you know, we value our friendships with all the clans in the village. It would be unfair of us to play favorites and just give the seats away. Therefore, to ensure fairness, we have decided to sell each vacant position at a flat rate of 10 million ryo." The math hit the room like a physical blow. There were roughly 400 positions in the police force, half of which were leaving, meaning 200 vacant seats. At 10 million ryo per seat, the Uchiha were poised to make another 2 billion ryo in pure profit. Are these Uchiha completely crazy for money? Hiruzen thought, feeling a headache pounding behind his eyes. Fugaku looked directly at the Hokage. "How many seats would you like to purchase, Hokage-sama? Please note, we are restricting sales to a maximum of 10 seats per faction." "Why a restriction?" Hiruzen demanded, his frustration boiling over. "If you're selling them, why not let me buy them all?" "Because if one faction buys all the seats, the police force becomes a private army," Fugaku replied smoothly, his Sharingan dark eyes locking onto Danzo for a fraction of a second. "We want diversity in our ranks to ensure justice." Hiruzen clamped his mouth shut. They are incredibly wary. Defeated, and realizing he needed a foothold in the police no matter the cost, Hiruzen gave a stiff nod. "Very well, I will purchase 10 seats." Fugaku's smile widened a fraction of an inch. "Excellent. That will be 100 million ryo. You have 7 days to send your chosen personnel to the police headquarters, along with a full deposit." Danzo and the two elders, equally trapped by their own desire for power, begrudgingly nodded their agreement. Fugaku remained standing, his posture rigid, but his tone deceptively mild. "Hokage-sama, there is one final request." Hiruzen suppressed a groan, rubbing his aching temples. "What is it now, Fugaku?" "Do you remember the orders you gave me the night the Nine Tails attacked?" Fugaku asked, his Sharingan dark eyes piercing the Hokage. "You ordered the Uchiha military police to stand down from the front lines and focus solely on civilian evacuation." Hiruzen's eyes narrowed. "I remember. Because we obeyed you, a terrible misunderstanding was born," Fugaku continued. "The villagers believe we are cowards, or worse, they suspect that we orchestrated the Nine Tails attack. We want to befriend the village again, but we cannot do that while carrying the blame for a disaster we didn't cause." Fugaku leaned forward slightly, letting a hint of iron enter his voice. "I want you to make your orders public. I want you to clear the Uchiha's name. If our clan is freed from this baseless hatred, we will achieve great stability in Konoha. But if this resentment continues to fester, many in my clan will not rest easy. In fact, if you refuse to clear our name, I fear I will no longer be able to guarantee the Uchiha will follow your future orders, Hokage-sama." Hiruzen's heart sank, a veiled threat. He is telling me that if I don't give them this public relations victory, the clan will rebel. The Hokage's head pounded from the sheer volume of concessions he had made today, but he knew Fugaku was right. If Hiruzen had not stopped them, the Uchiha might have subdued the Nine Tails with their eyes, and this rift would never have formed. To refuse now would undoubtedly push the clan toward a violent coup. "Very well." Hiruzen sighed heavily, conceding defeat. "At the next public village gathering, I will officially announce that the Uchiha were following my direct orders during the Nine Tails attack. Your name will be cleared." "Thank you, Hokage-sama." Fugaku nodded respectfully. As he straightened, he cast a subtle, fleeting glance at Uchiha Akira. Akira didn't speak, but a small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "That concludes our business," Fugaku said, turning to leave. "We will take our leave." "Fugaku, wait!" Hiruzen's voice cut through the room, sudden and lethal. The Hokage's killing intent flared for a fraction of a second, causing both Uchiha to pause at the door. "Tell me the truth," Hiruzen demanded, his eyes narrowed. Are the Uchiha planning a coup d'etat? Fugaku looked back over his shoulder, his expression perfectly calm and unreadable. A coup? Fugaku gestured to the signed land deeds, the transfer of half the police force's authority, and the massive bank deposit slips resting on the Hokage's desk. We just invested 2.2 billion ryo into this village's land and industrial resources, Lord Hokage. One does not burn down the house they just bought. Our future is now tied to Konoha's prosperity. With a final deep bow, Fugaku and Akira exited the office. The heavy oak door clicked shut behind them. For a moment, there was dead silence. Then, the sharp crack of Danzo's cane struck the floorboards like a judge's gavel. You gave them too much, Hiruzen, Danzo hissed, his visible eye burning with paranoia and fury. You yielded to their demands. They have bought massive tracts of lands, an iron mine to forge their own weapons, and now you are agreeing to publicly apologize and clear their name for the Nine Tails attack? You look weak. Homura and Koharu, the two village elders, immediately stepped up, their faces pinched with grim disapproval. Danzo is right, Koharu said sharply. Taking half the police force's jurisdiction from them is a victory for us, but giving them this much economic power, they are mocking us.
Hiruzen said nothing. He slowly picked up his pipe, packing a fresh pinch of tobacco into the bowl. When he finally looked up, the exhaustion that had plagued his features during the negotiation was entirely gone. In its place was the cold, terrifyingly calculating stare of the shinobi no kami. Do I look weak, Danzo? Hiruzen asked quietly. He struck a match, the flame illuminating his hardened eyes. Or are you simply too blind to see the cage they just locked themselves in? Danzo paused, his grip tightening on his cane. Explain.
Hiruzen exhaled a slow, thick plume of smoke. Fugaku thinks he has outmaneuvered us. He surrendered half of his clan's military authority within the village in exchange for land and an iron mine. He completely liquidated their war chest to do it. Tell me, Homura, how much money do you think the Uchiha have left in their reserves after spending 2.2 billion ryo today?
Homura's eyes widened slightly.
Nothing. They must be broke. Exactly. They have tied their entire survival to the village's economy.
Hiruzen said smoothly.
Which makes them dangerous, Danzo interrupted. Which makes them vulnerable, Hiruzen corrected, his voice like ice.
And the exoneration? Koharu asked, leaning in. If you clear their name for the Nine Tails attack as promised, the village's hatred for them will fade. Will it? Hiruzen mused, taking another drag from his pipe. I will keep my word. I will tell the village that they followed my orders to stand down that night. But human nature is a fickle thing, Koharu. We will simply let another rumor slip into the civilian sectors, a whisper that the reason I ordered them to stand down was because we suspected an Uchiha was controlling the Nine Tails. Hiruzen tapped a weathered finger against the massive deposit slip the Uchiha had left behind. Furthermore, it would be a terrible shame, Hiruzen continued, his voice dropping to a low, chilling register. Rumors were to spread through the streets about this money.
Rumors that the Uchiha embezzled billions of ryo during the Third Shinobi War, and that they are now using it to quietly buy up lands and mines across the region.
Homura's eyes lit up with dark realization. Shift the resentment. We remove the stigma of treason, but replace it with the stigma of aristocratic greed. The civilians will despise them even more.
What of the iron mine? Danzo pressed, stepping closer to the desk, fully invested in the Hokage's trap. If they manage to strike a new vein, they will have a monopoly on our steel.
Let them dig, Hiruzen replied coldly.
The mine is located outside the village's main infrastructure. Homura, you will oversee the trade routes. Implement heavy security tariffs on all materials transported from that sector. Claim the taxes are necessary for wartime bandit protection. We will bleed their profit margins so dry, they will be begging the village for loans just to keep the lights on.
The three elders stared at their Hokage, a renewed sense of dark respect washing over them. This was the Hiruzen who had led them through 3 great shinobi wars. He hadn't lost today. He had just changed the battlefield. Hiruzen leaned back in his chair, looking at the closed door. Fugaku and Akira thought they had secured a future for their clan. They had no idea they had just handed the village the rope to hang them with. Tobirama-sensei always warned me about the Uchiha's curse of hatred, Hiruzen muttered, a cloud of smoke rising to obscure his face. Let us see how long they survive when they trade their hatred for greed.
Akira and Fugaku stepping out of the cool shadows of the Hokage building into the bright afternoon sunlight. For a long moment, neither of them spoke as they walked side by side toward the Uchiha compound. Finally, Akira broke the silence. You did perfectly in there, clan leader, Akira said quietly, his eyes scanning the bustling civilian streets ahead. You played the Hokage exactly as we needed. Fugaku let out a long, heavy exhale. Some of the tension that had aged his face over the last few years seemed to melt away. I always wanted to avoid a civil war between our clan and the village, Fugaku admitted, his voice low. But trapped between the Hokage's suppression and our clan's pride, I never knew how to navigate it. I couldn't see a way out. Fugaku glanced at the young elder walking beside him. But since you showed me this path, I finally see a future where we don't have to bleed to survive. This is the only road the Uchiha can walk. There is no looking back now. Akira nodded, a sharp, ambitious gleam in his dark eyes. You are right. Blood buys graves. Money buys the world. We will make the Uchiha so prosperous, so undeniably vital to the economy, that the rest of Konoha will look like a footnote compared to us. Akira paused, his expression turning serious. But to achieve that, clan leader, we need to address our greatest weakness. I need to talk to you about a critical issue. Oh? Fugaku frowned slightly. What is it? Demographics, Akira stated bluntly. Tell me, clan leader, what is the current population of the Uchiha clan? Fugaku's frown deepened as he mentally tallied the registry. Before the Third Great War, we sat at roughly 1,400. Today, with the casualties we took, we are hovering around 1,200 men, women, and children. 1,200, Akira repeated flatly. And do you know the population of the Sarutobi clan? Fugaku thought for a moment. He was confident. Hiruzen's clan is large, including their branch families. I would estimate around 3,000. Akira stopped walking. He turned to Fugaku, his face dead serious. No, clan leader, Akira said, his voice dropping to a grim whisper. It is 8,000. Fugaku froze, his eyes widened slightly. What?
8,000, Akira repeated. And it doesn't stop there. Danzo's Shimura clan boasts nearly 7,000 members. The Mitokado and Utatane clans, the families of the other two village elders, number around 9,000 each. Together, the ruling administration's extended faction commands a population of over 33,000 people. A cold sweat broke out on the back of Fugaku's neck. The sheer disparity of the numbers was staggering. Even the Ino-Shika-Cho clans average around 3,000 members each, Akira continued relentlessly. And we are the Uchiha. We pride ourselves on being the strongest, the most elite. But politically, militarily, we are 1,200 people living in a village of tens of thousands. If the Hawks had gotten their way and we launched a coup,
we would have been exterminated, Fugaku finished, the horrifying reality finally sinking in. Even with the Sharingan, the sheer wave of bodies would have drowned them within hours. The rebellion was always doomed. Akira nodded slowly. Elite strength wins skirmishes. Population wins wars, and population dominates an economy. If we want to secure our new land and operate these new businesses, we need manpower. Fugaku looked at Akira, a new, profound respect settling into his chest. What do you propose? We implement a massive population initiative, Akira said, his tone shifting back to calculating business. With the profits from our commercial fronts, we will offer heavy financial stipends to Uchiha families for every child they have. We cover their medical care, their academy tuition, and offer housing bonuses. We have the money now. We need to fund them. Fugaku stared out at the village, the weight of his responsibilities settling comfortably on his shoulders for the first time in years. They will no longer merely survive. They will thrive. You are absolutely right, Akira, Fugaku said, his voice ringing with renewed authority. Our numbers are far too low. Draft the paperwork. I will introduce the policy at tomorrow's clan meeting. A few days later, the news hit the streets of Konoha like a shockwave. The Uchiha clan was officially opening up 50% of the Konoha military force to outside recruitment. For decades, the police force had been an exclusive, untouchable Uchiha monopoly. The sudden announcement that they were voluntarily surrendering half their power in the village sent the rumor mill into a frenzy. Immediately, the compound gates were swarmed. Representatives from every major and minor shinobi clan in the village, the Ino-Shika-Cho, the Inuzuka, the Aburame, and dozens of smaller families rushed to the Uchiha estate to strike deals. Securing a position in the police force meant steady government pay, authority over the civilian sectors, and immense political prestige. Fugaku met with the clan heads one by one in his study. He gave them all the exact same rehearsed, calculating answer Akira had drafted for him. To ensure fairness and prevent any single family from monopolizing the law, Fugaku would say smoothly, pouring tea for his guests, each clan may purchase a maximum of 10 officer seats. In exchange for a small administrative fee, of course, the clan heads practically threw their money at him. The administrative fees were exorbitant, but they paid without hesitation. In the span of a single afternoon, Fugaku had generated more liquid capital than the police force usually saw in a decade. He could hardly believe how easy it was. He deliberately reserved 20 seats for strong, unaligned commoner shinobi, filling them through a rigorous public exam to maintain the illusion of absolute fairness. Within a week, the newly integrated police force was fully staffed. Everyone in the village was thrilled. The clans gained power, the commoners gained opportunity, and the Uchiha amassed absurd wealth. Everyone was satisfied, except the Hokage and his advisors. With their war chest overflowing, the Uchiha immediately broke ground on the massive tracts of land they had purchased from the village. Akira wasted no time. He distributed massive bonuses to the clan members and immediately put them to work overseeing the construction of new commercial districts, supply warehouses, and civilian housing blocks. The Uchiha were suddenly too busy managing blueprints, signing contractor deals, and counting their profits to even whisper the word coup. The suffocating tension that had plagued the clan for years evaporated almost overnight. Even Shisui Uchiha, who had been sick with anxiety over the clan's future, found himself smiling. Relieved that the threat of civil war had vanished, he eagerly volunteered his time using his body flicker technique to haul heavy timber and stone across the construction sites. To meet their aggressive deadlines, Akira used the clan's vast wealth to hire nearly every available civilian builder, architect, and stonemason in the Land of Fire. News spread across the shinobi world like wildfire. The Uchiha were building an empire inside Konoha. But with the village technically at peace and the Uchiha's pockets bottomless, no one dared to interfere. But the greatest shift wasn't in the Uchiha's wealth, it was in the streets of Konoha itself. With their pockets lined with heavy coin, Uchiha shinobi began spending their evenings outside the compound. They flooded the village's taverns, restaurants, and bathhouses. They bought rounds of drinks for the locals, tipped generously, and laughed with the merchants. Slowly but surely, the villagers began to see the Uchiha in a completely different light. They were no longer the terrifying, aloof enforcers of the law. They were the wealthy, generous patrons funding the village's economic recovery. And ironically, the Uchiha's reputation was saved by the very people who replaced them. For decades, the village had complained that the Uchiha police force was too strict. They were arrogant, harsh, and entirely unsympathetic to civilian excuses. But they were also bound by a fierce, unshakable clan pride. An Uchiha policeman never took a bribe. To accept dirty money was an insult to their Sharingan. The new recruits from the other clans and the civilian sector did not share that pride. Within a month of the integrated police force taking over the streets, the rot of corruption seeped in. The post-war economy was still brutal for everyone else, and the new officers quickly realized the power of their badges. A civilian fruit merchant in the market district soon found out the hard way. When a brawl broke out near his stall, the new officers arrived late. Instead of arresting the thugs, the officers accepted a heavy purse of coins from the instigator and looked the other way. Before leaving, one of the new officers casually swiped 2 apples from the merchant's cart, claiming it was a patrol tax. The merchant watched them walk away in disgust. He thought back to the old days. An Uchiha would have sneered at me for being weak, the merchant realized bitterly. But he would have arrested the thugs, and he never would have stolen from my register. Incidents like this multiplied across the village. The new officers harassed poor vendors for protection money and played favorites in civilian disputes. They were far more corrupt than the Uchiha had ever been. The civilians quickly realized what they had lost. Whenever a dispute happened, the victims no longer dreaded seeing the red and white fan crest approaching. Instead, they actively prayed for it. When an Uchiha officer stepped onto the scene, the civilians knew the law would be enforced with cold, absolute fairness. For the first time in Konoha's history, when Uchiha shinobi walked their patrol routes, the villagers didn't look away in fear or whisper insults behind their backs. They greeted them with genuine smiles, offered them fresh tea, and thanked them for their service. Akira had surrendered half the clan's political power, but in doing so, he had completely shattered the village's hatred, turning the Uchiha from Konoha's greatest villains into their most respected saviors. A month later, the village gathered for the annual Konoha Foundation Festival. Red paper lanterns bathed the streets in a warm glow, and thousands of villagers and shinobi crowded into the central plaza beneath the Hokage monument. Standing at the podium, overlooking the massive crowd, the third Hokage held up his hands for silence. People of the Leaf, Hiruzen's voice echoed across the plaza, magnified by a sound amplification jutsu. Tonight, we celebrate our survival and our unity, but to truly move forward, we must address a shadow that has hung over this village for years. The festive murmuring died down. The crowd looked up, captivated by the Hokage's solemn tone.
I know that many of you hold a deep prejudice against the Uchiha clan regarding the tragic night of the Nine Tails attack, Hiruzen said smoothly. For years, I believed these were mindless rumors that would eventually fade, but seeing that anger still lingers in the hearts of my people, I must set the record straight. Hiruzen took a deep, grandfatherly breath. The Uchiha did not abandon the front lines that night. It was my direct order that kept them back. A collective gasp swept through the plaza. Civilians and ninja alike exchanged shocked glances.
The Uchiha are the strongest force in the shinobi world, Hiruzen continued, his voice swelling with practiced emotion. While our vanguard fought the beast, I knew I needed our most capable defenders to protect the evacuation shelters. I ordered the Uchiha to prioritize the lives of the civilian population over the glory of battle. The crowd erupted into furious whispers. So it was an order, a merchant whispered to his wife. No wonder they were never punished. A chunin muttered nearby. They were guarding the shelters. I made this choice because a Hokage must always think of the innocent first, proclaimed Hiruzen. Suddenly, from the left side of the plaza, a voice cried out. The Hokage protected us. Long live the third Hokage.
Long live Lord Third, another voice shouted from the right. Within seconds, the planted voices riled up the crowd. The villagers, deeply moved by the thought that the Hokage had specifically held back the elite Uchiha just to protect them, began cheering wildly. Long live the Hokage. Sitting in the VIP section on the terrace, the Uchiha delegation watched the spectacle unfold. Fugaku's face twisted into a dark scowl. Damn that sly old fogey, the clan leader cursed under his breath. He is truly vicious. He turned his apology to us into a political rally for himself. Beside him, Akira leaned back in his chair, casually sipping a cup of tea.
Hiruzen Sarutobi is smart, Akira murmured, his voice low that only the elders could hear. He planted his own anbu in the crowd to start the chanting. By clearing up our misunderstanding, he elevated his own position in the people's hearts. And you are fine with this? Fugaku hissed. Akira shrugged, setting his teacup down. He kept his end of the bargain, clan leader. The misunderstanding has faded. The villagers no longer think we are traitors. Let the old man have his applause. It costs us nothing. Come on, let's go. As the Uchiha delegation quietly stood up and exited the terrace, it wasn't the only ones leaving early. Across the plaza, the heads of several major clans had seen enough. Later that evening, inside the quiet, shadow-drenched halls of the Nara compound, the heads of the Ino-Shikacho alliance sat around a low wooden table. Shikaku Nara lazily poured a cup of warm sake, his eyes half closed in thought. Across from him sat Inoichi Yamanaka and Choza Akimichi. So, Choza rumbled, snacking on a bowl of roasted nuts, why do you think the Hokage suddenly decided to clear the Uchiha's name after all these years? It doesn't fit his usual strategy. Inoichi frowned. Fugaku must have pressured him. The Uchiha have been throwing an absurd amount of money around lately. Have you seen the construction in their district? They are developing faster than the rest of the village combined. Shikaku took a slow sip of his sake and set the cup down. It wasn't Fugaku. Inoichi raised an eyebrow. Then who? Uchiha Akira, Shikaku said flatly. The name hung in the air. The new kid they just put on the Elder Council? Choza asked, surprised. Shikaku nodded. One of my clan's chunin was an academy instructor a few years ago. He had Akira in his class. He said the boy didn't act like an Uchiha. He said the kid thought like a Nara. Shikaku rubbed his neck, sighing. Think about it. The Uchiha historically solved their problems with fire and steel. Suddenly they're liquidating assets, buying civilian infrastructure, forcing the Hokage into a public political corner using PR. That is not Fugaku's playbook. That is a strategist's work. Since Akira became an elder, the entire Uchiha paradigm has shifted. Inochi leaned forward, his expression turning serious. Should we increase our coordination with them? Shikaku stared at the ripples in his sake cup for a long moment. He hated village politics. It was always such a drag. But the writing on the wall was clear as day. The Uchiha were no longer a dying, isolated military faction. They were becoming an economic titan. Yes, Shikaku finally said, his sharp eyes meeting his friends. We should. Send them a gift tomorrow to congratulate them on their cleared name. We need to stay on the Uchiha's good side. And in the quiet meeting rooms of the Aburame, Hyuga, and Inozuka compounds, similar conversations were already taking place. A year passed. Inside the newly acquired Uchiha district, the massive construction project was nearing its end. In the shinobi world, where labor could be fueled by chakra, building didn't take decades, it took months. Earth-style jutsu raised perfectly level foundations in minutes. Water-style users provided immediate plumbing and mixing for concrete, while wind-style users dried the mortar instantly. With Akira's modern earth knowledge guiding their designs, the Uchiha bypassed traditional architecture entirely. Until now, the concept of load-bearing reinforced concrete frames didn't exist in the elemental nations. Even the Hokage's administration building, the pride of Konoha, stood only 4 stories tall. Standing in the heart of the Uchiha district was a sprawling 22-story luxury hotel. It was a sheer monolith of glass, reinforced steel, and smooth concrete. But the hotel was only the centerpiece. Surrounding it was a fully modernized commercial district that defied every everything the shinobi world knew. Akira had introduced Earth's concept of a shopping mall, a massive, multi-level indoor complex where a ninja could buy weapons, armor, standard low-level jutsu scrolls, and clothing all under one roof. There were high-end massage parlors, a glittering casino, and a sprawling sports complex. The Uchiha opened restaurants featuring exotic desserts Akira remembered from his past life, and offered exclusive VIP-hosted lounges for the wealthy merchants who visited the village. What are they thinking? A civilian merchant whispered to his neighbor in the marketplace, staring at the towering glass hotel in the distance. Why build so much? The Uchiha don't even have enough people in their clan to live in a tenth of those buildings. I don't know, the neighbor replied, shaking his head in awe, wistful. I wish we could go see it, but it's their private territory. We need an invitation just across the gate. The civilians were amazed, but the other shinobi clans were terrified. Inside the austere, traditional compound of the Hyuga clan, the mood was tense. The clan head, Hiyashi Hyuga, sat rigidly at the head of a long wooden table, surrounded by his stern-faced elders.
What in the world is Fugaku doing? An old Hyuga elder demanded, his pale, sightless eyes narrowed in frustration. Are the Uchiha planning a coup or not? First they integrate the police force, and now they're building glass towers. Perhaps it is a tactical defense, another elder suggested grimly, tapping his chin. By building structures that tall and dense, they are deliberately blocking the Unbu surveillance routes into their compound. Hiyashi sat in silence, listening to his elders panic over military tactics. But Hiyashi knew this wasn't about line of sight or a coup. I have intercepted reports from the civilian banking sector, Hiyashi said quietly, silencing the room.
He looked at his elders, his stoic face betraying a deep unease. The Uchiha have spent over 40 billion ryo on this project in a single year. The elders froze. The number was so astronomically high it didn't even sound real. It was double the Hokage's entire annual operating budget. 40 billion? The elder whispered, his jaw slack. Where did they even get that kind of wealth? They were rationing kunai a year ago. Hayashi looked out the window, his Byakugan deactivating as he stared at the distant glittering tip of the 22-story hotel piercing the sky. I don't know, Hayashi admitted softly. The heavy doors of the Hokage's office slammed open. Danzo Shimura practically stormed into the room, his cane striking the hardwood floor with violent, hurried thuds. He marched straight up to the desk, his visible eye wide with a mixture of rage and sheer disbelief. Hiruzen, Danzo snarled, pointing a trembling finger toward the window. Have you seen it? Have you seen the monstrosity the Uchiha just erected in the village? Hiruzen Sarutobi sat behind his desk. I have seen it, Danzo, Hiruzen replied, wearily, not looking up. Where did they get the capital? Danzo demanded, slamming his hand onto the Hokage's desk. My intelligence network estimates the construction alone cost over 40 billion ryo. Our entire annual budget is barely 20 billion. Have they been embezzling funds from the police department? Hiruzen finally looked up, his eyes bloodshot and exhausted. Embezzling? Danzo? To embezzle funds, we would have had to give them money in the first place. We haven't paid their full operational budget in 6 years. What exactly were they supposed to steal? Danzo's jaw tightened, cold urgency. Then they are a far greater threat than we realized, Hiruzen. The Uchiha are becoming too powerful. We need to eliminate them immediately. Danzo limped toward the window, glaring up at the towering glass monolith in the distance. Look at those behemoth towers, Danzo hissed. Our Onbu surveillance is completely blind. We cannot see into those structures from the outside, and we have no spies left on the inside. They are fortifying their compound under the guise of commercial development. From what my scouts gather, Danzo, they are simply building luxury hotels and shopping centers. Hiruzen sighed, rubbing his temples. You are a fool if you believe that, Danzo snapped, turning back to the Hokage. Did you not notice the height? They deliberately built a structure 5 times taller than the Hokage monument. It is a psychological weapon, Hiruzen. They are showing the civilians that they are the new masters of Konoha. Hiruzen frowned deeply, the accusation striking a bitter chord in his chest. He hated to admit it, but Danzo was right about the symbolism. The village skyline now belonged to the Uchiha. Those arrogant fools are still citizens of this village, Danzo sneered. If they have 40 billion ryo to waste on glass towers, they should be heavily taxed to fund Konoha's true defense. Demand the funds from them, Hiruzen. Hiruzen slowly nodded, his expression darkening. I will speak with Fugaku. Good, Danzo said, stepping back toward the door. But I require more than just Uchiha money, Hiruzen. I need you to issue a new draft. Order every major clan to send 5 of their best shinobi to root immediately. And I need my division's budget doubled. Now. Hiruzen's eyes narrowed. He set his pipe down on the desk with a sharp clack. You drafted recruits just last year, Danzo. Where are they? Danzo didn't flinch. They died in the line of duty. Some are missing. Missing, Hiruzen challenged, his voice growing dangerously cold. On what missions? You never filed the after-action reports with my office. They were highly classified espionage operations, Lord Hokage. Danzo replied stiffly, his tone mocking the formal title. Root exists in the darkness to protect the leaf. You know this. You are too reckless with the lives of our shinobi, Danzo, Hiruzen warned, his killing intent flaring for a brief second. The war is over. I cannot justify bleeding the clans dry. No family will surrender 5 of their best men to you this soon. You will have to wait until next year's academy graduation. Danzo's visible eye twitched with barely contained fury. These missions are vital to the survival of the village, Hiruzen. I said no, Hiruzen replied, with absolute unshakable authority. Then what about the funds? Danzo pressed, his voice rising. You miraculously placate the Uchiha police force before. Why can't you divert those funds to Root, as you have always done? Because now, every clan member is involved. We can't delay their salaries anymore. Doing so would make enemies of every clan in the village. Danzo stared at his old friend, his face twisting into an ugly, hateful sneer. You will regret this weakness, Hiruzen. Danzo spat. He turned on his heel and stormed out of the office, slamming the door so hard the walls rattled. Hiruzen sat in the sudden silence of his office, the headache behind his eyes throbbing mercilessly. He exhaled a long, shuddering breath. Anbu, Hiruzen called out to the empty room. A masked shinobi materialized from the shadows in the corner, dropping to one knee. Lord Hokage, go to the Uchiha compound, Hiruzen ordered, his voice heavy with dread. Summon clan head Fugaku to my office immediately. Yes, Lord Hokage, the Anbu replied, vanishing. High above the village, an Anbu operative stood on a terracotta roof, staring at the newly erected Uchiha compound in the distance. Even through his painted porcelain mask, his eyes were wide with a mix of awe and sheer intimidation. The towering monoliths of glass and steel pierced the sky, utterly alien to the wooden architecture of the hidden leaf. He swallowed hard, leaped from the roof, and bounded toward the Uchiha gates. The moment his boots touched the paved road outside the compound, 3 Uchiha patrolmen materialized from the shadows, their hands resting lazily on the hilts of their tanto blades. Who are you, and why are you here? One of the guards asked, his voice cold and devoid of respect. I am an emissary of the Hokage, the Anbu replied stiffly. Lord Third has summoned clan leader Fugaku. The lead guard stared at him for a moment, before giving a short nod. Follow me. The Anbu trailed behind the Uchiha as they walked deeper into the district. With every step, his disorientation grew. The dirt roads had been replaced by smooth, perfectly level asphalt. Instead of traditional wooden clan houses, sleek multi-story apartments lined the streets. The entire compound felt like he had stepped 50 years into the future. They approached a massive 13-story structure. As they stepped through the glass sliding doors of the lobby, the Anbu stopped in his tracks. Breathless, the interior was stunning. Polished marble floors, brilliant chakra-powered chandeliers, and an air of staggering wealth. The Uchiha guard led him to a set of metal doors and pressed a glowing button on the wall. The doors slid open to reveal a small, empty metal room. Get in, the guard ordered, stepping inside. The Anbu hesitated. Why are we entering this closet? The stairs are over there. The guard rolled his eyes. Just get in. As soon as the Anbu stepped inside, the doors slid shut. The floor gave a sudden lurch, and his stomach dropped. Through the glass pane on the back wall of the elevator, the Anbu watched the ground fall away. They were shooting upward at a terrifying speed. As they cleared the rooftops of the surrounding buildings, the entire village of Konoha spread out beneath them. The Anbu stared out the glass, his breath catching in his throat. From this height, even the Grand Hokage Monument and the Central Administration Building looked small. The elevator dinged, and the doors opened on the 13th floor. The guard led him down a carpeted hallway and knocked on a set of heavy mahogany double doors. Enter. Fugaku's voice called from within. The doors swang open. The Anbu stepped into a sprawling, modern executive office. A massive floor-to-ceiling glass window framed the entire village of Konoha behind a sleek obsidian desk. Fugaku sat behind it, reviewing a stack of financial ledgers. He didn't look like the stressed, embattled clan leader of the past. He looked relaxed, powerful, and impeccably dressed. Lord Fugaku, the Anbu said, bowing deeply. The Hokage has summoned you to his office immediately. Fugaku didn't look up from his papers. He simply signed his name at the bottom of a ledger, closed the folder, and stood up. Very well. Before the Anbu could say another word, Fugaku vanished in a blur of pure speed. The Uchiha guard turned to the Anbu, crossing his arms. The message is delivered. Get out of our compound. The Anbu bristled under the mask at the blatant disrespect, but he bit his tongue, turned around, and stepped back into the elevator. Minutes later, Fugaku materialized outside the Hokage's office. He knocked once, pushed the door open, and stepped inside. Lord Hokage, Fugaku said, offering a polite but shallow bow. You summoned me. Hiruzen looked up from his desk. The contrast between the two men was stark. Fugaku seemed to be aging in reverse, his posture straight and his eyes bright with newfound energy. Hiruzen, on the other hand, looked every bit his 60 years, his face lined with stress and exhaustion. Come in, Fugaku, Hiruzen said, gesturing to the seating area across the room. Please, have a seat. Fugaku blinked, momentarily thrown off guard. In all their years of strained meetings, Hiruzen had never once offered him a seat. It was a subtle, desperate play for diplomacy. Fugaku walked over and sat down on the plush sofa, crossing one leg over the other. To what do I owe the pleasure, Lord Third? Hiruzen joined him, sitting heavily in the opposite chair. He packed his pipe, his eyes locked on Fugaku. The village is going through a difficult financial period, Fugaku. Our reconstruction funds are running perilously low. Fugaku said nothing. He just waited. I see you have constructed an excessive amount of housing and commercial towers within your compound. Compared to the Uchiha population, don't you think it is a bit much? If your clan has secured an excess of wealth, I must ask that you consider donating a portion of it to the village treasury in aid in our collective recovery. Fugaku offered a tight, polite smile. I am afraid that is impossible, Hokage-sama. The capital used to build our district belongs to the individual families and investors of the clan, not the central leadership. I cannot confiscate their private money. Furthermore, we have spent nearly our entire liquid reserve liquidating those assets. We truly do not have much Rio left to give.
Hiruzen frowned deeply.
For years, whenever the Hokage had asked for concessions, Fugaku had always folded, desperate to build goodwill. But today, the clan leader was shutting him down with corporate doublespeak. Fugaku, Hiruzen said, his voice dropping its grandfatherly warmth. Are you attempting to open a hotel business? Let me be blunt. There are no tourists visiting Konoha in this post-war economy, and even if there were, they would seek cheap, traditional inns. No one will spend the exorbitant fees required to stay in those glass towers. Hiruzen leaned forward. How about a compromise? Sell half of those new buildings to the village administration. In exchange, I will formally reallocate the old Uchiha lands in the center of the village back to your clan. Fugaku's smile vanished. I believe there is a misunderstanding, Lord Third, Fugaku said, his voice dropping to a cool, authoritative register. When you ordered us to relocate to the edge of the village after the Nine Tails attack, we never sold our ancestral lands in the center of Konoha to the administration. We simply left them empty. Hiruzen's eyes widened slightly. He had assumed the land was forfeit upon relocation. Now that we have successfully settled on the outskirts, we are breaking ground on our ancestral plots. We are converting that space into commercial zoning. We are building a mall. A mall? Hiruzen repeated, utterly baffled. What is that? It is a centralized marketplace where civilians and shinobi can buy and sell goods under one roof, Fugaku explained. You can do that at any street stall, Hiruzen countered, his frustration leaking through, pressing. Why do you need a massive plot of land in the center of the village just to open a shop? Fugaku stood up, looking down at the Hokage. Because it will be a very big shop, Fugaku said flatly. And respectfully, Lord Hokage, what we do with our private land is our business. As I said, we have no liquid funds to donate to the village. You will have to look for handouts elsewhere. Fugaku turned toward the door. If there is nothing else, I must be going. I have a great deal of paperwork to finalize. Oh, and one more thing. Fugaku paused at the doorway, glancing back over his shoulder. Next week, we are officially opening our commercial district to the public, Fugaku said, his eyes flashing red for a brief menacing second. You are formally invited to visit Hokage-sama. Have a pleasant evening. Fugaku stepped out, shutting the door behind him. Hiruzen sat alone in his office, his pipe dead in his hand. He stared at the closed door, his face twisting into a scowl of pure, helpless frustration. Damn this arrogance, Hiruzen thought bitterly. One day, I will break them. Inside the Naka Shrine, the air buzzed with an entirely new kind of electric energy. The underground cavern was packed, but for the first time in Uchiha history, the clan wasn't gathered to discuss war, grievances, or the Hokage's latest slight. They were gathered for a business launch. Akira stood at the front of the room, looking over hundreds of Uchiha patrolmen, merchants, and genin. Listen up! Akira's voice cut through the excited chatter, instantly silencing the room. Next week, we officially open the Uchiha Commercial District to the public. For the last year, we have bled our accounts dry to build this empire. Now, it is time to reel in our investments. Akira paced the stage, his eyes sharp. I am deploying every available shinobi in this clan on an S-rank diplomatic escort mission. I want you to spread out across the elemental nations. You are to personally deliver invitations to the daimyos, the feudal lords, the wealthy merchants, and the elite shinobi of every major village. Escort them safely to Konoha. Akira reached behind him and pulled a heavy wooden crate onto the table. He popped the lid and pulled out 3 elegantly designed glass bottles, holding them up for the crowd to see. And you will take these with you, Akira announced. The clan leaned in, murmuring in curiosity. These are the 3 new spirits our clan's alchemists have perfected over the last year, Akira explained, holding up a sleek amber-filled bottle. This is Uchiha whiskey, the deep red one is Uchiha wine, and the dark brown is Uchiha rum. Akira set the bottles down with a heavy clack. You will gift these bottles to every wealthy target you find. Let them taste it, and when they ask for more, you tell them that through the first month of our grand opening, these drinks will flow free inside the Uchiha district. The entire shrine erupted into a deafening, unified cheer. Yes! Then go! Akira commanded, pointing toward the exit. Move out! As the crowd surged toward the doors, Akira stepped off the dais and walked through the dispersing clan members. He made a beeline for 2 figures lingering near the back pillars, Shisui and Itachi. Akira paused, looking at the 2 prodigies. They were always together, practically inseparable. Do they not have girlfriends? Akira wondered dryly to himself. As Akira approached, Shisui immediately straightened his posture and offered a deep, respectful bow. Elder Akira. Itachi mirrored the gesture perfectly, his dark eyes solemn. I want to thank you, Elder, Shisui said, his voice thick with genuine relief. Akira raised an eyebrow. For what? For stopping the fighting between the village and the clan. You found a way out of the darkness that none of us could see. Itachi nodded in agreement. Yes, Elder Akira, thank you. Akira looked at the young heir. Itachi was a genius, but his mind was constantly warring with itself over loyalty. Itachi, Akira said, quietly, his tone turning dead serious. We follow a very simple policy now. The village does not harm us, and we do not harm the village. But make no mistake, Akira's eyes hardened into a cold, predatory stare. If they cross that line, we will not stage a coup. We will fight a war of total annihilation. Do you understand? Itachi swallowed hard, staring back into Akira's eyes. Akira wasn't the strongest combatant in the clan, but the sheer suffocating weight of his conviction made Itachi feel like the young elder could murder anyone in the room if he truly wanted to. I understand. Itachi nodded slowly. Good, Akira said, his expression softening back into business mode. He reached into his robes and pulled out an ornate envelope sealed with gold wax. Shisui, I have a mission for both of you. This letter was personally written by Lord Fugaku. It is an exclusive invitation for the Fire Daimyo himself. Deliver it to the capital and escort his carriage back to Konoha safely. Shisui took the letter, his expression turning entirely professional. Consider it done, Elder. The 2 prodigies bowed once more and vanished in a blur of speed. Within hours, hundreds of Uchiha fanned out across the land of fire and beyond, carrying the ornate invitations and the 3 mysterious bottles to every major clan in Konoha and every feudal lord on the continent. 2 days later, inside a smoky, crowded tavern in Konoha civilian district, the noise was deafening. Did you hear? A burly civilian merchant shouted over the din, slamming his mug onto a sticky wooden table. 3 days from now, the Uchiha compound is opening its gates to the public. Across the table, a skinny laborer scoffed. So what? I heard they built a massive casino in there. What's the point? You don't even have enough Rio to buy a single chip. Forget the games, the merchant yelled back, leaning in eagerly. I heard the Uchiha invented 3 brand new types of alcohol. The clan heads who received the sample bottles are apparently hoarding them like they're made of liquid gold. They won't even let their wives touch them. A third man, a retired genin, chimed in from the next table. Yeah, I heard about that. And do you know the craziest part? The Uchiha are offering all of it for free for the entire first month. The skinny laborer nearly choked on his drink. What? Free? Yeah, the genin laughed. You can walk into their district and drink yourself into a coma, and the Uchiha will foot the bill. But don't forget the tower, a woman added from the bar. I heard the massive glass building is a luxury hotel. Whoever stays on the top floor gets to sleep in the clouds. And they built a giant sports arena right next to it. They've hired dancers from the capital to perform on opening night. The skinny laborer stared at his empty mug, his mind blown. Damn, just how rich are the Uchiha? How can they afford to give away an entire month of alcohol and entertainment? The burly merchant laughed, slapping his friend on the back. Who cares how they afford it? Just shut up and enjoy the free booze. The table erupted into greedy, idiot grins. And they weren't the only ones. Similar conversations were echoing in taverns, marketplaces, and noble courts not just in Konoha, but across the entire shinobi world. The Uchiha had successfully baited the hook. Now, they just had to reel them in.
Back inside the Uchiha compound, Akira sat across from Fugaku in the quiet traditional tatami room of the clan leader's private estate. The sliding paper doors were open to the garden, letting in a cool evening breeze. Clan leader, Akira began, setting his teacup down. I want to propose the construction of a massive centralized clan library within the new district. Fugaku looked up from his scrolls. A library? We already have the Naka Shrine archives. The archives are restricted and disorganized, Akira countered. I want a facility where every Uchiha shinobi can learn techniques openly, based on a merit system. If a jonin spends 1 hour tutoring a genin in the training ground, they earn 1 merit point. 100 points buys access to any C-rank jutsu scroll. 500 unlocks a B rank, 1,000 for an A rank, and 2,000 for an S rank. Fugaku's Sharingan flared slightly as he processed the idea. It was brilliant. It incentivized the elite veterans to actively train the younger generation without relying on the Hokage's academy. It's a good system, Akira. Fugaku nodded in approval. I will formally implement it at the next clan meeting. Suddenly, the soft patter of footsteps echoed from the hallway. A small boy peeked his head around the sliding door. Akira looked over and smiled. Sasuke, come here. It's been a long time. You've grown. The 5-year-old boy didn't step toward Akira. Instead, he scurried across the room and hid shyly behind his father's broad back, gripping Fugaku's robes. Fugaku frowned slightly, reaching back to gently push his youngest son forward. Do not hide, Sasuke. Greet your elder brother. Sasuke stepped out, looking up at Akira with wide, dark eyes, and offered a stiff, incredibly cute bow. Akira chuckled, returning the bow with genuine warmth. Is he already 5, Lord Fugaku? Yes, Fugaku replied, a hint of pride in his voice. In a few days, he will officially enroll in the Ninja Academy. Akira nodded. I hear the incoming class is incredibly competitive this year. The heirs of almost every major clan will be attending. Upon hearing this, Sasuke puffed out his small chest, his shyness instantly vanishing. It doesn't matter, the boy declared confidently. No one will be able to beat me. Akira laughed out loud. That's the spirit. The Uchiha are the strongest, Sasuke. Fugaku placed a hand on his son's head. Go on, Sasuke. Go find your mother. Sasuke obediently nodded and padded out of the room. As soon as the boy was out of earshot, Akira's faded into a grim, serious line. Clan leader, do you know about the 4th Hokage's child? Fugaku nodded slowly. Naruto Uzumaki. Yes, Akira said softly. He is also joining the academy this year. From my civilian contacts in the village, I've heard he is living in absolute squalor. He survives on expired milk and instant ramen. Fugaku looked genuinely shocked. How is that possible? His father was the Hokage. Even though the boy is an orphan, both Minato and Kushina had significant estates, savings, and properties under their names. Akira stared at his tea. Lord Third and his advisors embezzled it all under the guise of village reconstruction. They seized the Namikaze assets to hide the boy's true lineage. Fugaku's face darkened with absolute disgust. Those cowardly old fools. They wouldn't even leave a grieving infant's inheritance. He looked sharply at Akira. You aren't thinking of helping him, are you? He is the Jinchuriki of the 9 Tails. If we get close to him, Hiruzen will immediately suspect we are trying to control the beast. I know the political risks, Akira replied calmly. That is why we won't approach him directly. I want Sasuke to befriend him. Frowning. My son? Yes, children making friends at the academy is entirely natural. The Hokage cannot legally stop it without exposing his own paranoia, Akira explained. Furthermore, I want you to issue a quiet directive to every Uchiha-owned business in the new district. Whenever Naruto visits any of our shops or restaurants, his tab is entirely free. Fugaku stared at Akira in shock. Akira, why are you going this far for the 9 Tails brat? He is the very reason we were alienated in the first place. Because that child did not choose to become a Jinchuriki, Akira said, his voice hardening. The villagers spit on him for a crime he never committed. They treat him like a monster, when in reality, his tiny body is the only thing suppressing a natural disaster and keeping Konoha safe. He isn't a demon. He is a hero. Fugaku remained silent for a long time, warring with his clan's deep-seated resentment of the fox. Finally, he let out a heavy sigh and nodded. All right, I will speak to Sasuke, and I will inform the merchants. Thank you, clan leader, Akira said. He stood up, brushing off his robes. I should take my leave, clan leader. We have a grand opening to prepare for. With a deep, respectful bow, Akira turned and walked out into the cool night air. The day of the grand opening had finally arrived. Outside the towering stone walls of the new Uchiha commercial district, a massive sea of people had gathered. Hundreds of Konoha civilians, merchants, and off-duty shinobi jostled for position in the early morning. Standing atop the reinforced main gate, a veteran Uchiha Jonin looked down at the sheer size of the mob. A bead of sweat rolled down the side of his face. Are they actually here to shop? He wondered nervously, or did Danzo incite a riot? But as he listened to the excited chatter and saw the eager smiling faces in the crowd, he let out a long exhale. He dropped down to the ground, placed his hands on the heavy iron doors, and pushed them wide open. Welcome to the Uchiha district, the Jonin shouted, his voice booming over the crowd. The mob surged forward like a tidal wave. They flooded the wide paved streets, scattering in every direction to explore the massive alien architecture. A large group poured through the glass doors of the new shopping mall. They stopped dead in their tracks, staring up at the multi-level balconies and the sheer scale of the building. Dozens of pristine storefronts lined the halls. There were clothing boutiques selling high-end silks, armorers displaying polished steel plating, and massive shinobi supply depots selling explosive tags and standard weapons openly over the counter. For the grand opening month, Akira had mandated a massive 50% discount on every physical item in the district. It was an aggressive strategy. The shinobi equipment was practically dirt cheap, and the visiting ninja lost their minds, buying crates of supplies they didn't even need. Many of the storefronts on the upper levels were still empty, waiting for future tenants, but the crowd was too busy spending money to care. Across the district, a rowdy pack of off-duty chunin and civilian laborers pushed their way through the swinging doors of a massive, dimly lit tavern. Is this the place? A burly laborer asked, looking around the polished mahogany bar. The place with the free booze? A bartender wearing an apron over his high-collared Uchiha shirt smirked. He grabbed 2 heavy glass bottles and slammed them onto the counter. For the next 30 days, boys, drink until you drop. Akira had revolutionized the brewing process by utilizing precise fire and water style techniques
techniques. The Uchiha alchemists had reduced the fermentation and distillation of grain by 90%. Raw ingredients like wheat and potatoes were currently dirt cheap in the post-war economy, allowing the Uchiha to mass-produce high-proof alcohol for pennies. Even if rival clans tried to steal a bottle to reverse engineer the recipe, it was impossible. They lacked the modern molecular knowledge from Earth. As long as the distillation seals remained a secret, this alcohol would be the clan's greatest cash cow. The tavern erupted in cheers. An old veteran shinobi slammed his empty shot glass down, his face flushed red. Gods, I've never tasted anything like this in my entire life. The bartender chuckled, sliding a shot of clear, ice-cold vodka across the wood. Try this, old man. I guarantee it'll put hair on your chest. The veteran tossed it back. His eyes widened comically, and he let out a harsh, burning cough before a massive grin split his face. Damn, that almost took me straight to the Pure Lands. The bar roared with laughter. In the high-end casino down the street, wealthy merchants and visiting feudal lords were experiencing a different kind of shock. They were used to simple, luck-based dice games in dingy gambling dens, but here, beautiful hostesses guided them to velvet-lined tables, introducing them to a brand new, terrifyingly addictive game called Uchiha Poker. It wasn't just about luck anymore. It was about strategy, reading your opponent, and maintaining a perfect poker face. Within an hour, the VIP patrons were hopelessly hooked, throwing massive stacks of chips onto the tables. While the district buzzed with excitement and flowing coin, a small, solitary figure approached the main gates. A young boy with spiky blonde hair, wearing a worn, oversized t-shirt, stopped at the threshold. Naruto Uzumaki stared up at the towering glass buildings, his bright blue eyes wide with innocent wonder. Hidden in the branches of a tall oak tree just outside the gates, the Anbu operative assigned to watch the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki frowned deeply behind his mask.
The Anbu wanted to intercept the boy and drag him away, but he was completely paralyzed.
The moment Naruto had stepped near the gates, 12 Uchiha Jonin, the elite gate guards, had simultaneously shifted their gaze. 12 pairs of fully matured 3 Tomoe Sharingan locked under the tree where the Anbu was hiding. The operative broke out in cold sweat. If I make a single aggressive move toward that boy on their soil, he realized with sickening clarity, they will butcher me before I can even weave a hand sign. At the gate, one of the Uchiha Jonin stepped forward. He towered over the small boy, his face stern. Hey kid, the Jonin said, his deep voice startling Naruto. Are you lost? Why are you here? Naruto looked up at the scary ninja, completely unfazed. He tapped his chin with one finger, his face the picture of pure innocence. Is this the place where the old fogies in the market said I could get unlimited free food? The Jonin blinked, momentarily thrown off by the sheer audacity of the question. Where did you hear that? In the market. Naruto grinned brightly, pointing back toward the civilian sector. They said the Uchiha were giving away free stuff today. The Jonin stared down at the whiskered boy for a long moment. He didn't smile, but the harshness left his eyes. He reached into his flak jacket and pulled out a sleek, heavy black metallic card. The Uchiha fan crest was elegantly engraved on one side, with the letters VIP stamped in gold on the other. Yes, the Jonin said quietly, handing the card down to the boy. You can eat whatever you want here. Go inside. If anyone asks you for payment, you show them this. Naruto took the heavy metal card, his blue eyes sparkling as he traced the gold letters. Whoa, this is so cool. What does VIP mean? The Jonin crossed his arms, looking slightly uncomfortable. You don't need to know. Just remember to show it to the shopkeeper so you don't have to pay. Now get inside before the food is gone. Okay, thanks, mister. Naruto cheered, shoving the card deep into his pocket before bolting excitedly through the gates. The Jonin watched the blonde blur disappear into the crowd. He shook his head slowly. I don't know why Lord Fugaku ordered us to give the demon brat a black card, he thought to himself. But orders are orders. The Jonin slowly turned his head, his 3 Tomoe Sharingan flaring bright red as he looked directly at the oak tree outside the walls. Hidden in the branches, the Anbu operative swallowed a lump of pure terror. Fuck, the operative cursed internally. He abandoned his post, vanishing in a desperate swirl of leaves to report the catastrophic breach of protocol to the Hokage immediately. The Anbu operative materialized in the center of the Hokage's office, dropping to one knee. He didn't have time to properly announce himself. Behind the Hokage's desk, Hiruzen Sarutobi sat with a stern expression, flanked by his 3 top advisors, Koharu, Homura, and Danzo Shimura. Lord Hokage, the Anbu reported, his voice tight behind his porcelain mask. The Nine-Tails Jinchuriki has just entered the Uchiha compound. Explosive shock. Danzo's visible eye widened in absolute shock. He slammed his cane into the floorboards and stood up. What? Why did you let the boy cross their gates? I could not stop him, Lord Danzo, the operative replied, keeping his head bowed. The boy followed the civilian crowds. The moment he approached, 12 Uchiha Jonin locked their Sharingan on my position. If I had intervened, they would have killed me. Hiruzen's face darkened, his pipe dangling loosely from his lips. If they use their eyes to control the Nine-Tails inside those walls, the village will be destroyed, Danzo shouted, turning to Hiruzen. We must send Anbu in to extract the boy by force immediately. No, Hiruzen commanded sharply, raising a hand. We cannot forcefully breach the Uchiha compound today. Why hesitate, Hiruzen? Danzo demanded. They have our ultimate weapon. Because half the shinobi world is currently walking through those gates as their honored guests, Danzo. Hiruzen snapped back. If our Anbu storm the Uchiha district and start a firefight in front of foreign merchants and visiting lords, the entire world will know Konoha is fracturing from the inside. We will look weak, and the other great nations will attack us by nightfall. But if we simply demand they return the boy, Homura pointed out nervously, the Uchiha will refuse. The tension will escalate, and the other major clans in the village are already leaning toward the Uchiha's new wealth. They will not support us blindly. What should we do then? Koharu asked, her face pinched with anxiety. Hiruzen leaned back, steepling his fingers. He closed his eyes, his mind working furiously. I doubt the Uchiha will attempt to control the Jinchuriki today. They just spent over 40 billion ryo building those glass towers. They invited the wealthiest people on the continent to their grand opening. Fugaku is not a fool. He will not destroy his own masterpiece by unleashing the Nine-Tails. Hiruzen opened his eyes, a cold, calculating light shining within them. However, Hiruzen continued, his voice dropping into a deadly calm, we will surround the Uchiha compound with every available Anbu operative. If the Uchiha do try to extract the beast, or if the boy loses control, we will let the Nine Tails rampage entirely within their walls. We will seal the exits and let the fox burn their new empire to ash before we step in to contain it. Danzo's visible eye gleamed. He immediately understood the underlying cruelty of the Hokage's order. If the Uchiha made a single mistake, Hiruzen was perfectly willing to let them die to protect his own political standing. Understood. Danzo smiled darkly. I will deploy my root operatives to the perimeter as well. Suddenly, the doors to the office flew open. Another Anbu operative stormed into the room, panting heavily. Lord Hokage! Danzo barked furiously. Have you forgotten how to properly enter the Hokage's chamber? Hiruzen glanced at Danzo, thinking internally. Look who's talking. What has happened? Hiruzen asked the operative. The Anbu stood up, swallowing hard. Forgive the intrusion, Lord Third, but the fourth Raikage of the Hidden Cloud is at the front gates of Konoha. The entire room froze. What? Koharu gasped. Why is he here? Has he declared war?
Quickly, Danzo roared, grabbing his cane. Sound the alarms. Mobilize the vanguard. No, wait, the Anbu interrupted desperately. He did not bring an army, Lord Hokage. He arrived with a small personal escort. He presented a formal gold-stamped invitation written personally by clan head Fugaku Uchiha. Hiruzen's pipe slipped from his mouth, clattering onto the desk. He came to the heart of the leaf on an invitation? It was unprecedented. The sheer audacity of a rival Kage walking up to Konoha's gates was staggering. Does he not fear assassination? Homura whispered in horror.
Lord Hokage, the Anbu continued, his voice trembling slightly. The letter Fugaku-sama wrote guarantees the Raikage's absolute safety while on Uchiha soil. It explicitly states that if anyone, even Konoha shinobi, attempts to assassinate him, the entire Uchiha clan will wage a war of retaliation to protect their guest. Damn them. They are openly mocking our sovereignty. Danzo sneered, his face twisting with rage. Before Hiruzen could process the diplomatic nightmare, a third Anbu operative materialized in the center of the room. Lord Hokage, the third operative reported urgently. The third Tutsuki Kage of the Hidden Stone has just arrived at the western gate with his entourage. He also possesses a personal invitation from Fugaku Uchiha. How dare Fugaku invite enemy Kage into our village without informing the administration? Danzo exploded, spittle flying from his lips. Agreed, Hiruzen muttered, his jaw tight. Should I send the Tsuchikage away, Lord Hokage? The third Anbu asked nervously. Are you out of your mind? Hiruzen almost shouted, slamming his fist onto the desk. If the Uchiha formally invite foreign Kage as honored guests and the Hokage turns them away at the gates, it proves to the entire world that we have completely lost control of our own clans. It will spark an international diplomatic crisis. Hiruzen rubbed his temples, a massive headache blooming behind his eyes. The Uchiha had completely checkmated him. The Uchiha had turned their compound into an international neutral zone, and the Hokage couldn't touch them without looking like a tyrant on the global stage. Let them in, Hiruzen ordered through gritted teeth. Escort them directly to the Uchiha district. Put them under maximum surveillance. If any of them make a hostile move toward the village infrastructure, inform me instantly. Yes, Lord Hokage. Both Anbu operatives replied in unison before vanishing in a swirl of leaves. Danzo paced the floor, his cane clicking against the wood. Why would Fugaku invite rival Kage here, Hiruzen? Is he attempting to forge a military alliance? Is he planning to defect and relocate the clan to the cloud or the stone? No, Hiruzen said slowly, his eyes dark. My spies tell me it is because of the alcohol. Alcohol? Homura asked, confused. Along with the invitations, the Uchiha sent out samples of 3 brand new, highly potent spirits that have never been seen in the elemental nations. My intelligence suggests the distillation process is revolutionary, producing perfectly clear spirits. The Kage are not here for war, Danzo. They are here to negotiate massive, exclusive trade deals for that alcohol. Danzo stopped pacing. A vicious, ugly look crossed his face. If the Uchiha secure international export contracts with the other great nations, their wealth will multiply exponentially. They will completely eclipse the village treasury. We cannot allow those deals to go through, Hiruzen. I agree, Hiruzen murmured, his eyes locking on to his old friend. But we cannot attack them directly. We must destroy the product from the inside. Danzo smiled coldly. The Uchiha are offering these drinks for free to the public, are they not? What if a few civilian patrons were to suddenly fall violently ill after consuming this new Uchiha rum? What if a rumor spread through the foreign delegations that the Uchiha alchemists used cheap, toxic industrial runoff in their fermentation process? If a prominent merchant or a foreign diplomat were to witness such an incident, Koharu added, catching on to the dark scheme, the Kage would never sign the export contracts. The Uchiha's international reputation would be ruined before it had begun. Hiruzen sat back in his chair, picking up his pipe. He struck a match, the flame illuminating his hardened, unforgiving eyes. See to it, Danzo, Hiruzen commanded quietly. Ensure the Uchiha's grand opening ends in a disaster they cannot buy their way out of. Just as Danzo and Hiruzen finalized their sabotage plan, another Anbu operative burst into the Hokage's office. Before the operative could even drop to one knee, Hiruzen sighed, rubbing his temples. Let me guess, another Kage has arrived at the gates. But the Anbu shook his head rapidly. No, Lord Hokage. Both Hiruzen and Danzo frowned. Then what is it? Lord Hokage, the Anbu panted, his voice trembling. The fire daimyo has arrived at the village gates, and he is being personally escorted by Uchiha Shisui and Uchiha Itachi. Hiruzen shot up from his chair. What? The feudal lord of the land of fire had come in person. Hiruzen didn't wait. He vanished from his office in a burst of speed, leaving a stunned Danzo behind. Seconds later, Hiruzen materialized near the massive wooden gates of Konoha. The gate guards panicked, instantly drawing their weapons to shield the Hokage, but Hiruzen waved them off. Is the daimyo here? Hiruzen demanded. The guard captain nodded nervously, pointing outside the gates. Hiruzen quickly stepped out. Standing in the dirt, surrounded by his royal guards and the 2 Uchiha prodigies, the fire daimyo looked hot, dusty, and incredibly irritated. As soon as the daimyo spotted the Hokage, his face flared red with anger. Hiruzen, how long do you expect me to wait out here? Need I remind you who keeps this village running? Hiruzen's face darkened slightly at the public reprimand, but he immediately forced a warm warm, apologetic smile. My deepest apologies, Lord Daimyo. I was personally overseeing the preparations for your security. That is why I was delayed. I have 7 elite Onbu operatives ready to escort you through the village. The Daimyo waved a dismissive jeweled hand. No need. I have these 2 Uchiha boys. They are more than enough. Hiruzen glanced back at Shisui and Itachi. He felt a sharp sting of displeasure that the Daimyo trusted Uchiha over the Hokage's Onbu, but he swallowed his pride and bowed his head.
Very well, Lord Daimyo, Hiruzen said smoothly. Please, come in. Let us proceed to the Uchiha compound. The Daimyo looked surprised. You are coming with me? Of course, my lord. Your security is my utmost priority, Hiruzen replied, his voice hardening slightly as he shot a warning glance at Shisui and Itachi. I cannot allow you to be kidnapped. Both Shisui and Itachi's faces darkened at the thinly veiled insult, but they remained silent. As the group began to walk through the gates, a cheerful voice called out to them. Esteemed guests, over here. A young Uchiha Genin jogged up to them, gesturing toward a sleek, beautifully crafted vehicle parked just inside the walls. Please sit in the carriage. You do not have to walk. The Uchiha district is quite far from the gates. The Daimyo stopped, his eyes lighting up as he took in the vehicle. It was a luxurious 2-wheeled rickshaw, painted in rich crimson and gold, with plush velvet seats and a collapsible silk canopy. How beautiful, the Daimyo praised, running a hand over the polished wood. Who made this? The Uchiha Genin smiled proudly. It was designed by the Uchiha clan, my lord. It is built specifically for civilians, merchants, and nobles who cannot travel long distances quickly on foot. The Daimyo caught something. He frowned, looking around. Wait, too far? What do you mean by that? As far as I know, the Uchiha are the founding clan of Konoha. Your ancestral lands are the center of the village, just up the street. The Uchiha Genin's smile faltered. He glanced nervously at the Hokage for a split second before looking down. I do not know, my lord. The clan leader simply told us one day that we had to move to the very edge of the village, so that is where we live now. The Daimyo wasn't stupid. He sensed the sudden suffocating political tension radiating from Hiruzen Sarutobi and decided not to press the issue. Well, the Daimyo clapped his hands together, changing the subject. How do we get in? Right here, my lord, the Genin said, lowering a small wooden step. The Daimyo climbed in, sinking into the incredibly soft red cushions with a contented sigh. The Uchiha Genin then looked at the Hokage. Lord Third, you may get in as well. Hiruzen gave a curt nod and climbed up beside the Daimyo. Akira hadn't been able to build an internal combustion engine, but he knew how to design a modern carriage chassis, complete with advanced suspension springs. For power, he simply used the shinobi themselves. A ninja could pull a rickshaw infinitely faster and smoother than a horse. The Uchiha Genin picked up the front poles of the rickshaw. Shisui, Itachi, and the Daimyo's royal guards vanished into the shadows to escort them from the rooftops. With a sudden burst of chakra, the Genin took off. The Daimyo gasped, gripping the armrests, but to his absolute shock, the ride was perfectly smooth. There were no bumps, no rattling wheels, and no jarring impacts. Incredible, the Daimyo marveled. How are we going so fast without feeling the bumps of the dirt roads? The Uchiha Genin called back over his shoulder. Because we are not on dirt, my lord. It is because of the road. The Daimyo looked confused. The road? Yes, the Genin replied. The surface beneath our wheels is called asphalt. It is extremely durable and perfectly flat. Because our clan was relocated so far from the gates, our clan leader knew merchants would hate the long, bumpy walk, so he spent a fortune paving a direct, smooth route from the gates straight to our compound. The Genin grinned. For a normal civilian walking through the village streets, it takes over an hour to reach our lands. But on this road, with this cart, we will be there in 15 minutes. Only 15 minutes? Hiruzen blurted out, genuinely shocked. Even a trained chunin running on foot through the crowded village streets would take at least 30 minutes to cross that distance. Hiruzen leaned over the side of the cart, staring down at the sleek black pavement rolling beneath the wheels. Is it because of this strange black stone? He wondered. Exactly 15 minutes later, the rickshaw glided to a smooth halt outside the towering gates of the new Uchiha compound. Fugaku stood waiting for them, flanked by his honor guard. The Hokage and the Daimyo stepped down from the cart. Magnificent! The Daimyo laughed, clapping his hands. I didn't feel a single bump, and we are already here. This carriage is wonderful. Fugaku bowed deeply. I am glad it pleased you, Lord Daimyo. When you return to the capital, please take a fleet of these carriages. They are a gift from the Uchiha. The Daimyo's eyes sparkled with greed. Truly? Well, I suppose I will have to be a little shameless and accept. The feudal lord laughed heartily. Standing to the side, Hiruzen's face darkened with envy. Why didn't he offer one to the Hokage? Pushing down his annoyance, Hiruzen looked at Fugaku and pointed to the black pavement. Fugaku, these black roads, can we pave the entire village with this material? Fugaku almost coughed up blood. The entire village, Lord Hokage? Fugaku asked, shaking his head. This asphalt is an experimental technology developed by the Uchiha. It is incredibly labor-intensive. Every 100 meters of this road cost us 10 million ryo. The 8-kilometer stretch from the gates to our compound alone cost almost 800 million ryo. Hiruzen's jaw practically dropped. 800 million ryo just for a flat road? Just this single road cost us 800 million. Fugaku smiled thinly. I am afraid the village does not have the budget to pave the entire village. Hiruzen stared at the black pavement, completely dumbfounded. Then why did you build it, Fugaku? If it is so devastatingly costly, why waste the money? Fugaku remembered a quote Akira had told him in the Naka Shrine months ago. He looked the Hokage dead in the eye and delivered the line flawlessly. Because, Lord Hokage, Fugaku said, his voice ringing with absolute confidence, in business, connectivity is the ultimate weapon. Hiruzen looked confused, completely failing to grasp the modern economic concept. He opened his mouth to ask further, but Fugaku smoothly cut him off. But enough about roads, Fugaku said, turning his warm diplomatic smile back to the feudal lord. Lord Daimyo, please, let us go inside. You have waited long enough. As the heavy gates of the Uchiha compound swung open, the Daimyo and the Hokage stepped inside. Instantly, they stopped dead in their tracks. From a distance, the new Uchiha district looked impressive, but standing at the base of the massive glass and steel structures was an entirely different experience. The sheer, terrifying scale of the architecture hit them like a physical blow. The buildings loomed over them, their polished windows reflecting the sunlight in blinding flashes. Hiruzen craned his neck, looking up at the towering monoliths. A sudden, instinctual knot of fear formed in his stomach. Fugaku, Hiruzen asked, his voice tight. Are you absolutely certain these structures will not collapse? Fugaku's face darkened slightly at the insult, but he forced a polite smile. I can assure you they are perfectly safe, Lord Hokage. They are anchored deep into the bedrock. Fugaku turned away from Hiruzen, focusing entirely on the feudal lord. He pointed toward the center of the district. Lord Daimyo, look at that structure.
The daimyo followed Fugaku's finger and gasped. Standing in the heart of the compound was the 22-story luxury hotel. It was a sheer spire of glass and steel that seemed to pierce the very clouds.
Gods above, the daimyo whispered, his eyes wide with shock. How did you build something so massive? Fugaku smiled, his chest swelling with pride. That, Lord Daimyo, is officially the tallest building in the entire shinobi world, and at the very top is our grand penthouse suite. Tonight, you will be staying there. The daimyo blinked, turning to Fugaku in disbelief. Tonight, Lord Daimyo, Fugaku declared smoothly, you will become the first person in recorded history to spend the night at the absolute highest point in the world. No other feudal lord, no merchant, and no kage has ever slept at that height. Hiruzen's jaw tightened. A sharp, bitter pang of jealousy flared in his chest. He is the Hokage, the man who watched over the village, yet he would not be the first to look down upon it from the clouds. Me? The daimyo pointed a trembling finger at himself. I will be the first person in the world? Yes, my lord. Fugaku nodded respectfully. History may remember you as the first man to live in the sky. The daimyo's face broke into an expression of absolute giddy ecstasy. Incredible. Take me there at once, Fugaku. I want to see the inside. Right this way, Fugaku replied, gesturing toward the hotel. As they walked, Fugaku's mind flashed back to a conversation he'd had with Akira weeks earlier in the Naka Shrine. Make absolutely certain the fire daimyo stays in the penthouse on opening night, Akira had instructed, sliding a blueprint across the table. Why? Fugaku had asked. It is our finest suite. Shouldn't we charge a fortune for it? Because, clan leader, this is what we call marketing, Akira had replied with a wicked grin. When the other daimyos and kage hear that the Lord of Fire slept in the sky, what will their pride force them to do? They will come here and demand to stay there as well, Fugaku realized. Exactly. And what happens when a wealthy civilian merchant books that room after them? Asked Akira. Precise. Won't that merchant feel like a daimyo for a night? The prestige will be intoxicating. The waiting list for that suite will be booked solid for the next 10 years. We will charge whatever we want. Fugaku had felt completely enlightened by the young elder's terrifying business acumen. Back in the present, the group reached the base of the 22-story hotel. The daimyo craned his neck all the way back, his hat nearly falling off as he stared up at the peak. He swallowed hard, his excitement suddenly mixing with dread. Please tell me we do not have to walk up the stairs. Fugaku chuckled softly. No, my lord. Please step inside. Fugaku led them through the grand lobby to the elevator. He pressed the glowing call button. With a soft ding, the polished metal doors slid open. The daimyo and the Hokage stared skeptically at the small, enclosed metal box, but they followed Fugaku inside. As soon as the door shut, Fugaku pressed the button for the 22nd floor. The elevator gave a sudden lurch and began accelerating upward. Whoa! The daimyo yelped. Panicking, he grabbed the metal handrail on the wall. Fugaku, the room is shaking! Hiruzen also stiffened, his hand dropping instinctively to his kunai pouch. He flared his senses, searching for a genjutsu, but he felt absolutely no chakra. Fugaku remained perfectly calm. He pointed to the transparent glass wall at the back of the elevator. Look, Lord Daimyo, we are simply moving up. The daimyo slowly turned his head, his breath caught in his throat. Through the glass, he watched the village of Konoha shrink beneath him, the Hokage monument, the dense forests, and the civilian rooftops spread out like a miniature map. Am I flying? The daimyo whispered in awe. I can see the entire village! Before they could fully process the view, the elevator smoothly decelerated and came to a halt. The doors slid open with a soft chime. We have arrived, Lord Daimyo, Fugaku announced. What? Already? The daimyo gasped, stepping out into a lavishly carpeted hallway. He looked back at the metal box. What kind of incredible ninjutsu is this, Fugaku-san? Hiruzen also looked on expectantly, completely baffled by the frictionless, chakraless ascension. It is called an elevator, Fugaku explained smoothly. It operates on a complex mechanical pulley system, meaning it requires no chakra. Even a civilian can operate it simply by pressing a button. The daimyo looked profoundly impressed. Is that so? The Uchiha truly are brilliant. Fugaku smiled, leading them down the hallway until they reached a set of massive, intricately carved double doors. Lord Daimyo, Fugaku announced, gesturing to the massive double doors. This is it. Fugaku pushed the heavy doors open. The moment the daimyo and the Hokage stepped across the threshold, they felt as though they had walked into an entirely different dimension. The grand penthouse suite was staggering. A massive, open-concept living area stretched out before them, surrounded by glass windows that offered an unobstructed panoramic view of the entire village and the distant mountains. My lord, Fugaku said, walking to the center of the room, we are currently standing at the highest architectural point in the world. You can watch the sun rise over the elemental nations from this very spot. The daimyo hurried to the glass, his eyes wide as he looked down at the tiny ant-like figures of the villagers far below. Fugaku led them through the suite, pointing out the modern amenities Akira had insisted upon. Through here is the bathing chamber. The porcelain tub is fully automated using advanced water and lightning-style sealing formulas. You simply lay down, press a button on the wall, and the water will heat and circulate automatically. Then Fugaku gestured to the sleek sliding doors. Furthermore, you do not even need to open the doors yourself. They are rigged with proximity seals. They will part automatically as you approach. The daimyo gasped as the doors seamlessly slid open on their own. He stepped inside, staring at the massive cloud-like mattress dominating the center of the room. This, Lord Daimyo, Fugaku said proudly, is the most comfortable bed in the world. The mattress is woven with specialized chakra-conductive threading that retains ambient heat and provides perfect lumbar support. Sleeping on it for a single night will completely cure chronic back pain. The daimyo's eyes instantly lit up. What? It can cure my back pain? I have had every royal physician in the capital searching for a remedy for years. The feudal lord looked at the pristine white sheets with such intense longing that he seemed ready to dive face first onto the mattress right then and there. You may retire whenever you wish, my lord. Fugaku chuckled softly. But there is still much of the district to see if you have the energy. The daimyo tore his eyes away from the bed, his excitement renewing. Yes, of course. Lead the way, Fugaku-san. Minutes later, they descended from the sky and walked across the bustling commercial district to the Uchiha Grand Casino. The moment they stepped through the gilded entrance, the sensory overload hit them. The massive, high-ceilinged hall was bathed in warm golden light. Hundreds of wealthy patrons and visitors visiting shinobi were crowded around velvet-lined tables, the air filled with the clinking of chips, the scent of expensive cigars, and the low hum of excited conversation. Fugaku, the daimyo laughed, clapping his hands together. Let us play. Fugaku smiled, though his eyes gleamed with anticipation. Right this way, Lord Daimyo. They headed straight for the high roller tables in the back. Fugaku loved the new game Akira had introduced, Uchiha Poker. It was a game tailor-made for his clan. The Uchiha were born proud and stoic. Maintaining a cold, unreadable expression was practically written into their DNA. It was no wonder the game carried the Uchiha name. They approached the grand exchange counter. The young Uchiha receptionist immediately straightened her posture, bowing deeply. Clan leader, Lord Hokage, Lord Daimyo. Fugaku waved a hand. Prepare 1 million ryo in high-denomination chips for the daimyo, please. The receptionist blinked in shock of a massive sum, but quickly nodded. She pulled out a heavy stack of sleek obsidian and gold chips and placed them respectfully in front of the feudal lord. Compliments of the house, my lord, said Fugaku smoothly. Fugaku then reached into his own robes, pulling out a thick bound stack of bills. He placed exactly 1 million ryo in cash on the counter, and 1 million in chips for myself, please. The receptionist took the cash, counted it rapidly, and slid an identical stack of chips to her clan leader. Under Akira's strict new corporate laws, even the clan head could not simply take money from the casino's vault. Every chip had to be accounted for in the master ledger to prevent embezzlement and inflation. The only exception were diplomatic comps for VIPs like the daimyo. Hirozen stepped up to the counter, casually crossing his arms, fully expecting the receptionist to slide a complimentary stack of chips his way as well. He waited. The receptionist simply looked at him, offering a polite, expectant smile. She didn't move. Hirozen frowned. He glanced at Fugaku. Lord Hokage, Fugaku said, his tone perfectly polite but utterly unyielding. Tapping his own chips. You must exchange your ryo for chips here. As you can see, even I must pay to play. Reading the play, seething internally, Hirozen's face tightened. He looked at the daimyo's complimentary chips, immediately realizing the political play. Fugaku was blatantly currying favor with the feudal lord, while forcing the Hokage to empty his own pockets. Damn this arrogant, stingy clan, Hirozen thought bitterly. Masking his irritation, Hirozen unsealed his pouch, pulled out a stack of bills, and begrudgingly bought 1 million ryo worth of chips. With their chips in hand, Fugaku led them to a private VIP table in the center of the room. As they approached, they realized the table was already occupied by an absurdly powerful roster of players. Sitting around the green felt were the 3rd Tsuchikage, Onoki, the 4th Raikage, and the 4th Kazekage, Rasa. Do you gentlemen mind if we join you? Fugaku asked smoothly. The massive 4th Raikage slammed his fist onto the table, his face flushed with frustration. He glared up at Fugaku. Fugaku, you bastard! The Raikage barked, gesturing wildly at the cards. Who the hell invented this maddening game? The Raikage pointed a thick, accusing finger at the tiny floating form of Onoki across the table. Why is this old fossil winning every single hand? Fugaku chuckled softly as he, the daimyo, and the Hokage took their seats. In Uchiha Poker, Lord Raikage, Fugaku said, elegantly stacking his chips, you must learn to control your emotions. On the other side of the bustling shopping district, Naruto wore an expression of pure, unadulterated joy, a rare sight for the young boy. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just tolerated, he was treated like absolute royalty. His arms were already weighed down with multiple heavy shopping bags. At first, he had merely walked into the stores just to look around, but the moment the shopkeepers recognized him, they dropped whatever they were doing to give him their utmost priority. It was all because of the card. The Uchiha clan had minted only 10 exclusive VIP cards in existence, and miraculously, the very first one had been gifted to Naruto. The merchants and clan members didn't know the exact reasoning behind the clan leader's decision, but the mandate was crystal clear. Treat this child with the same respect as the head of the clan. The perks of the VIP card were staggering. Word had spread that a holder could acquire anything they desired, in any quantity, absolutely free of charge for the rest of their life. The card could even be passed down to their descendants. Furthermore, the card holder had the right to summon a protective escort of 10 elite Uchiha Jonin at any time, a massive perk that Naruto was entirely oblivious to. Naturally, the few people who knew about the card were bitterly jealous and desperately wished they had one of their own. Spotting a nearby dongo stall, Naruto's stomach rumbled. Juggling his shopping bags, he happily joined the queue behind a group of kunoichi. As soon as they moved forward, Naruto stepped up to the counter. Can I have some? He asked with a bright grin. That'll be 20 ryo, the shopkeeper replied, handing over a fresh, warm skewer of dongo. Naruto nodded, shifted his bags and reached into his jacket. He pulled out the gleaming golden VIP card and presented it. The shopkeeper's eyes bulged in shock. A VIP of the Uchiha clan. The man's surprise quickly melted into a sheepish, highly respectful smile. Ah, you don't have to pay, he stuttered politely. Thank you for your patronage. Naruto's smile widened as he walked away, happily munching on his sweet dongo. Everything here is really free, he thought, a warm feeling blossoming in his chest. What an amazing place. No one is glaring at me. No one is trying to avoid me or chase me away like they do in the village. For the first time, he felt truly welcome. Man, this is the best place ever. Naruto wasn't the only one enjoying the district. Children and heirs from all the major clans were scattered throughout the bustling streets, taking full advantage of the amenities. Walking together, Shikamaru Nara and Shoji Akamichi were taking in the sights. Choji was happily devouring a bag of fried food. Man, Shikamaru, this place is the absolute best. Choji mumbled through a mouthful of fries. Earnestly, they have so much good stuff to eat here. Shikamaru nodded lazily, hands tucked into his pockets. Yeah, the Uchiha really outdid themselves. It's like they built a place straight out of the future. Their path was briefly blocked as two heavily intoxicated men stumbled past, leaning on one another for support. Shikamaru clicked his tongue in annoyance. Damn drunks. What a drag. They're really drinking in the middle of the day? I heard the alcohol is free here, Choji noted, grabbing another handful of food. Shikamaru just sighed, and the duo moved forward without another word. Elsewhere, the area was teeming with life. Kiba Inuzuka, the Hyuga children, and the Aburame heirs were out having fun with their respective clan members. The district had something for everyone. Some were sampling exotic foods, others were buying high-end clothes and cutting-edge weapons, while some were simply relaxing at the luxurious spas. The women of Konoha had discovered a new obsession, the beauty parlors. A massive, eager line snaked outside the most popular salon, while nearby cosmetic and jewelry stores were packed to the brim with thrilled customers. At a quiet outdoor cafe, Asuma Sarutobi sat with his girlfriend, enjoying a perfect, peaceful date.
Smiling across the table, he realized he was having the best day of his life. The lively atmosphere continued unabated as the afternoon sky shifted into brilliant hues of orange and purple. Soon, the sun dipped below the horizon, and the clock struck 7 p.m., ushering the vibrant Uchiha district into its bustling nightlife. As evening fell, a massive wave of people began moving toward the newly built sports complex.
Hey, hurry up, a man shouted to his friends, picking up his pace. If we don't walk faster, we won't be able to find a single seat. Rumors had spread like wildfire that all the top singers and dancers from across the elemental nations had been gathered to perform in one place. By the time the crowd poured into the massive stadium, the stands were already packed to the brim. The air vibrated with the thumping bass of loud, energetic music. Up in the exclusive VIP section, the third Hokage looked out over the sea of cheering people. How many people are visiting this place today? He thought, his eyes wide. Stunned silence. Beside him, the fire daimyo and the visiting Kages from other villages sat in stunned silence, completely overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the event. Soon, the lights dimmed, and the main event began. A famous female singer stepped out onto the brightly lit stage, her voice ringing out over the roaring crowd. Internally, she was ecstatic. She had never performed for an audience this massive in her entire life. Between the roaring applause and the absolute fortune the Uchiha clan had paid to hire her, it felt like a dream. She and the other performers poured their hearts and souls into the show, singing to their heart's content. The night inside the Uchiha district was nothing short of magical. When the concerts ended, some visitors booked rooms to stay the night, while others reluctantly headed home. But one thing was certain, even more people would flock to the district tomorrow. Later that night, the atmosphere inside the Uchiha compound was electric. Almost every ninja in the clan had gathered in the main assembly hall for an emergency meeting. Instead of their usual tense, brooding demeanor, the room was filled with laughter and bright smiles. Clan members were patting each other on the back, exchanging enthusiastic congratulations. Sitting comfortably in one of the elevated elder seats, Uchiha Akira watched his clansmen with a quiet, satisfied smile. This, he thought to himself, is exactly how the Uchiha clan should have been in the original anime. The room gradually quieted as Fugaku stepped up to the podium to officially begin the meeting. Judging by the sheer size of the crowd today, it is safe to say our grand opening was an overwhelming success, Fugaku announced, his voice ringing with pride. Everyone who walked through our gates was absolutely amazed by the marvel we have built. He turned toward the elder seating. And for that, I want to personally thank Uchiha Akira. Akira stood up gracefully, bowing his head. Clan leader, please, it was the cumulative effort of the entire Uchiha clan that made this possible. Fugaku smiled warmly. Perhaps, but it was because of your brilliant suggestions that we were able to achieve this. Suddenly, a younger Uchiha ninja stood up from the crowd. Clan leader, while I was patrolling the streets today, I overheard a lot of the villagers talking. Many of them said they actually want to live here now. They said they felt safer inside the Uchiha compound than anywhere else in the village. Soft chuckles and proud smiles rippled through the gathered ninjas. Fugaku nodded in agreement. It seems that over this past year, our efforts have paid off. We have successfully rebuilt our trust with the villagers. He paused, his expression turning serious but eager. Now, I want to call up the finance minister to report our total sales for today. The finance minister stepped forward. He took a deep breath and spoke loudly so the entire hall could hear. Clan leader Fugaku. Today, we made a total of 340 million ryo in sales. A pin-drop silence fell over the hall, followed by a collective gasp. Over 300 million? Even Fugaku's eyes widened in shock, doing the math, barely believing it. Over 300 million in a single day? If that's the case, wouldn't we be projected to make around 110 billion ryo in a single year? The crowd buzzed with dizzying excitement. 100 billion ryo. It was an incomprehensible amount of wealth. Fugaku-san, let's not celebrate too quickly, Akira suddenly interjected, his calm voice cutting through the excitement. All eyes turned to him. Today was opening day, Akira explained practically. The hype was at its peak, which is why we made so much. On a normal day, we will likely only gross around 200 million ryo. Furthermore, you cannot forget our overhead costs. We still have to purchase raw materials, restock inventory, and pay the salaries of our employees. Akira did mental math before continuing. Taking all of that into account, our actual net profit will be around 90 to 100 million ryo per day. In a year, we will only be making around 33 billion ryo in pure profit. For a second, the room was quiet. Then grins broke out across the crowd again. 33 billion ryo. It was still an astronomically massive sum. The entire construction of the commercial district had cost the clan roughly 40 billion ryo, meaning they would pay off their entire debt in little over a year. More amusingly, the entire yearly operating budget for the Hidden Leaf Village was only around 20 billion ryo. If Hiruzen Sarutobi ever heard Akira use the word only to describe a 33 billion ryo profit, the old Hokage would surely cough up a mouthful of blood. Looking around the room, it was clear. Every single ninja in the Uchiha clan was incredibly, overwhelmingly pleased. The assembly hall was still buzzing with excitement when Uchiha Akira raised his hand. The room quickly quieted down, all eyes fixed on him. From today onward, Akira announced, his voice carrying clearly across the hall, every Uchiha who works within the commercial compound will receive double their current salary. A collective gasp swept through the room, instantly followed by an eruption of pure joy. Before today, a standard worker's salary was 120,000 ryo. Now, it would be a staggering 240,000 ryo. In the past, Akira had to carefully manage every single coin, but with the massive profits pouring in, money was no longer a concern. Akira glanced over at the clan leader. Fugaku-san, we have the funds to support this, correct? Fugaku smiled broadly and nodded. Yes, we certainly do. Fugaku then stepped forward, his expression turning a bit more authoritative. Now I know exactly what some of you are thinking. Those of you currently serving in the Konoha military police force are probably considering resigning tomorrow to come work in the compound. The police officers in the crowd shifted uncomfortably, their faces falling. They felt incredibly unlucky to be stuck in their high-stress, lower-paying village jobs while their peers were getting rich inside the district. Don't do it, Fugaku warned firmly, because we will not hire you. The village still needs the police force. A wave of profound disappointment washed over the officers. But then, Fugaku's smile returned.
However, the clan leader continued, his voice rising, I am authorizing a triple salary for any police force members who are assigned to patrol the perimeter and streets directly surrounding the Uchiha compound. What? Triple? The disappointment vanished in an instant. 300,000 Rio. The officers' faces hardened with absolute determination. They were suddenly ready to patrol the Uchiha district day and night without a single complaint.
Furthermore, Fugaku added, we will soon be launching an export company to sell our exclusive Uchiha products to other hidden villages. Anyone who participates in the transport and escort of these goods will receive massive bonus payouts. The Uchiha ninjas threw their fists in the air, cheering at the top of their lungs. That is all for tonight, Fugaku declared. Dismissed. The Uchiha ninjas filed out of the hall, their hearts light and their futures looking brighter than ever. Meanwhile, inside the Hokage Monument building, the atmosphere couldn't have been more utterly different. The Hokage's office was bathed in deep shadows, illuminated only by the faint moonlight bleeding through the window and the glowing embers of Hiruzen Sarutobi's pipe. Thick, suffocating smoke hung in the air. Sitting on the sofas were the three village elders, Koharu Utatane, Homura Mitokado, and Danzo Shimura. Their faces were twisted with a mixture of bitter jealousy, greed, and paranoia. Are you truly going to just sit there and let the Uchiha hoard this much wealth, Hiruzen? Homura hissed, his hands gripping his cane tight. From our intelligence, they could easily earn 10 billion Rio a year. That is nearly half of the entire village's operating budget. We gave them that land on the outskirts. We have every right to take it back and relocate them somewhere barren. Koharu adjusted her glasses, her eyes cold and calculating. The alcohol they are selling, it's moving like wildfire. It's too popular. I say we declare it a public health hazard. We can claim we suspect they are mixing harmful, addictive substances into the brew. Under the guise of village safety, we will seize their recipes, confiscate their stock, and ban their private sales. From the darkest corner of the room, Danzo's lone visible eye gleamed with pure malice. You are both thinking too small, Danzo said, his voice a gravelly whisper. Think about what 10 billion Rio actually means, Hiruzen. If they buy 10 billion Rio worth of detonating tags, they could blow half of Konoha off the map in a single night. This isn't just a business, it is a military threat. We must sanction them, cap their earnings, leave them 5% of the profits to survive, and seize the remaining 95% for the village. Hiruzen exhaled a long plume of smoke, his face hidden in the shadows. His head throbbed. He knew his former teammates were using village security as an excuse to mask their own immense greed. But the dark truth was, Hiruzen wanted those properties under his control too. The Uchiha having complete financial independence terrified him. If they didn't rely on the village's mission desk for income, the Hokage had no leash to control them. But he couldn't just violently seize their assets. Not yet. That would spark a civil war. Patience. Hiruzen finally spoke, his voice low and dangerous. Directly taking their land will cause an uprising. If we want their empire, we have to slowly bleed them dry. The elders leaned in as Hiruzen laid out the first stage of his plot. The Uchiha's business relies on foreigners, Hiruzen explained smoothly. Tourists coming to play at their casinos, buy their goods, and stay in their hotels. Starting tomorrow, the village will implement a mandatory entry toll at the main gates, 1,000 Rio per person for anyone entering Konoha who isn't a resident. Homura blinked. Just an entry fee? Think about the numbers, Hiruzen said, a dark smirk pulling at the corner of his mouth. At least 20,000 people visited from outside the village today. That is 20 million Rio a day. Even if the flow of tourists reduces drastically over time, we will effortlessly siphon over 7 billion Rio a year directly from their customers, right into our own pockets. The elder's eyes widened in realization. It was parasitic, effortless profit. Homura eagerly nodded. Brilliant. Let's do it immediately. Hiruzen then slowly turned his gaze toward the shadows, locking eyes with his old rival. As for you, Danzo, the Hokage ordered, his tone utterly ruthless. Use the Foundation's network to track down the Uchiha supply chains. I want you to quietly buy out every supplier, every farmer, and every merchant they use to procure the ingredients for their alcohol and food. Danzo's lips curled into a wicked, twisted smile as he understood the Hokage's cruel intention. We will choke off their raw materials, Hiruzen concluded coldly, his pipe glowing bright red in the dark room. When they have nothing left to sell, their clan will starve, and their businesses will crumble right into our hands. 2 weeks later, the vibrant, booming atmosphere of the Uchiha commercial district had been suffocated. Inside the main warehouse, the silence was deafening. The massive wooden vats that were supposed to be brewing their famous alcohol sat completely empty. The shelves, once overflowing with exotic foods, high-end clothing, and cutting-edge ninja tools, were stripped bare. In the clan's central meeting room, the heavy air felt like a physical weight. The Uchiha elders sat in utter despair, their previous joy entirely extinguished. Fugaku stared at the financial report on his desk, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. The village's sudden entry toll had crippled their tourist traffic overnight. Foreigners were outraged by the exorbitant fees at the gates and simply turned around. But that wasn't the worst of it. Danzo's foundation had acted with ruthless efficiency. Every single farmer, merchant, and supplier the Uchiha relied on for grain, meat, and raw materials had suddenly refused to do business with them. Those who hadn't been bought out had been terrified into submission. The Uchiha's supply chain had been completely decapitated. We are bleeding money, the finance minister whispered, his voice trembling. We are paying double salaries to our workers, but we have nothing left to sell. At this rate, we will bankrupt the clan in less than a month. Fugaku clenched his fist so hard his knuckles turned white. His shouting gun flared to life, spinning furiously with helpless rage. They had built their own livelihood, but the Hokage was strangling it without throwing a single punch. In the center of the desk sat a scroll bearing the Hokage's seal. It was an ultimatum. Hiruzen had graciously offered to resolve the supply chain issues and lower the gate tolls in exchange for the village taking 90% ownership of the Uchiha commercial district and placing all their recipes and businesses under the direct control of the Konoha Council. It was extortion. It was slavery. But looking around at the exhausted, defeated faces of his clansmen, Fugaku realized the bitter, horrifying truth. They were trapped. If they rebelled, they would be slaughtered as traitors. If they did nothing, they would starve.
We, Fugaku's voice cracked. He swallowed his immense pride, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. We have no other choice. For the survival of the clan, we must compromise. Suddenly, a hand slapped down over Fugaku's wrist.
Fugaku looked up in shock. It was Uchiha Akira. Unlike the rest of the room, Akira didn't look defeated. In fact, as he stood in the dim light of the flickering candles, Akira was smiling. It was a dark, chilling, and supremely confident smile. Akira, what are you doing? Fugaku asked, his voice strained. We have no supplies left. We are finished. Did you honestly believe, Akira began, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper that echoed through the silent room, that I would build an empire worth billions and not expect the vultures to circle? The elders looked up, their eyes widening in confusion. Akira calmly took the Hokage's ultimatum scroll, crumpled it up, and tossed it into a nearby brazier. The room watched in stunned silence as the Hokage's demands burned to ash. Hiruzen's greed blinded him. Akira sneered. By putting that ridiculous toll at the gates, he didn't just cut off our customers, he cut off the entire village's economy. Do you think the Akimichi are happy their restaurants are suddenly empty? Do you think the Yamanaka and Inuzuka are pleased that all the tourist money is dried up? Hiruzen is choking every single clan in this village, and they are furious. Akira reached into his robes and pulled out a heavy, pristine scroll sealed with pure gold wax. He slammed it on the table. While they were busy celebrating our supposed downfall, I took a trip, Akira declared, unrolling the massive document. I contacted all the major clan heads who wanted our financial support, and then I paid a personal visit to the Fire Daimyo himself. Fugaku leaned forward, his Sharingan activating in sheer shock as he read the contents of the scroll. It was covered with official stamps and signatures, the Akimichi, the Nara, the Yamanaka, the Hyuga, and at the very bottom, the unmistakable absolute seal of the Fire Daimyo. Do you know what this is, clan leader? Akira asked, his grin widening into something triumphant. This is an official impeachment letter. The daimyo himself has agreed. Hiruzen Sarutobi is destroying Konoha's economy, and he is entirely unfit to lead. A collective gasp echoed through the room. The elders stood up from their seats, the heavy, suffocating despair in the air instantly replaced by an electrifying surge of hope. We aren't going to fight a bloody civil war, Fugaku-san, Akira continued, his eyes gleaming with sheer ambition. It is finally time we make an Uchiha the Hokage. The word hung in the air, Hokage, as the gathered Uchiha members fully processed what he was proposing. Utter shock painted their faces. The dream that had been denied to their clan since the founding of the village was suddenly sitting right there on the table. Fugaku stared at the scroll, his heart pounding against his ribs, but a seed of doubt still lingered in his mind. Akira, even with the daimyo's backing, the transition requires the village's approval. After everything, will the villagers actually support an Uchiha taking the hat? Internally, Akira was grinning from ear to ear. No one in this world understands the terrifying brainwashing power of 21st century advertising. Akira suddenly slammed both hands onto the table, leaning forward as his voice rang out with absolute, unshakable authority. I still have billions of Ryo in reserves, and I will pour every single coin I have into an advertising campaign the likes of which Konoha has never seen, Akira declared, his Sharingan blazing in the dim light. I will make sure the villagers see a glorious Uchiha poster on every street corner, every wall, and every storefront. I will buy the spokespersons. I will buy the neutral jonin. I will make sure that everywhere these ninjas go, all they hear, see, and talk about is an Uchiha Hokage. Slowly, Akira turned his gaze toward the window, his eyes locking onto the distant stone faces of the Hokage monument. His expression turned ice cold and endlessly calculating. Hiruzen wanted a war. Fine, Akira whispered, his voice carrying a dark, chilling promise. Let's show him how a war is really played without shedding a single drop of blood. But I promise you, this is going to hurt him far worse.
Master.